Hallelujah. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. That means you have been paid for. That makes me belong anyway. And wrapping up this veil of tears, you found Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meridith. I am Jonathan.
And I'm Meridith.
And we're not going to wallow in the muck this morning, but we're going to chat with you about your questions, God's answers from the Bible, and some of our own conversation about these latter days, the crazy times, everything upside down. And we're a little bit late this morning. Lots going on in the household, but a real good conversation between us about encouragement. And I hope that will, even though it was private, it will benefit and come into what we're going to talk about today that has to do with, our one question is a man who honestly wants to be encouraged and doesn't feel that the current attempts to recapture masculinity, stereotypifying as monster trucks and baseball, he doesn't, feel encouraged by that because that's not him, right? And so the question, how much of that is actually a problem? Like, do I need to repent and like baseball? Otherwise I'm not a man, right? Or what are the real principles we're trying to work with here that can transcend such passing things as monster trucks and baseball, right? Like I'm personally, neither of those am I after them. I do have large tires on a vehicle, however. I find large tires attractive. I don't, go watch monster truck rallies. So there's a spectrum. There's a wide range of masculinity, and the question is going to ask this and then tie into, I think, what we can talk about with regards to man and woman as well, which tends to be where the conversation needs to be for us these days. Not just you and I, but like everybody, and because we live in a Philistine capital city where they don't believe it exists, right? Man and woman. So, hey, out there, if you do hear anything wrong with the sound today, I'm not using my headphones at the moment, just for comfort's sake, honestly. And so I will keep an eye on the comments here, and you can let us know if the sound needs an adjustment. And also, because there is only the one question today, if you do want to throw a comment into the sidebar, you certainly can, asking a question, and we'll see if we can get over there. Probably not for this first hour, though. So hang on to your question at the moment. And then if you do have a question that you want to send to the show, we found out there was a little loophole in our coding for the email refraction through the interwebs. How does it move through cloud space time when you send it out of your box? There's a lot of moving little numbers and all that. And there was a loophole, which maybe meant some questions won't come through or didn't come through if they were sent in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, you can still do it. And I'm told it's working out that at madpxm.com/contact. That's just the contact page first off for us. And then if you would like to, send a question, you send it there. There is also now at madpxm.com, which runs through Substack, a contact button, question contact button. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told you can find it. Don't press the screen. Or maybe you press the screen if you got your, you push the button. So send your questions there, and we'd like to take those questions here and dig into them with some resources beforehand. But today, no direct Bible question coming up. Just a lot of talk about man and woman with Jonathan and Meridith. Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meridith. Did I say you said your name? Yeah. Okay. So good morning, Meridith. Again.
Good morning.
Yeah. What out of everything, what you just open plate, like talk about something you pick. That's hard though, huh?
Yeah.
I know. I know. Is that hard for everybody, or is it just hard for ladies?
Oh, why do you find that to be something that?
Well, a trope about man and woman is that women are indecisive, right? So, and in learning from men are from Mars, women are from Venus. What's his name? I don't remember his name.
I don't know.
Learning from that guy, there's just some sort of truth to it where, like, give a man A or B and he'll be like, pick one without even having a reason, and then he'll make up the reason, and then he'll die on that hill later. And the lady's like, well, let me consider. And that this leads to, in the book, I believe, challenges with choosing a place to eat, for example. And that you can rectify that with all the patterns in the book, all the habits the book teaches you about discussion. But the idea that it is difficult for a woman put on the spot to decide, and not hard for a man, because the man will just do it. Doesn't mean it's better, right? But he'll just do it. He'll give an answer. That trope's out there. And so it's, I don't know, as a trope, I don't think it's wrong, but I'm willing to discuss it, right? So it's a good place to throw it.
This word trope is interesting to me. Do you mind
I think I'm using the word trope
me
to mean an
about
argument that really should be a joke. Like it's kind of sadly funny how people believe that kind of thing. And that's the way the word trope is used. So
So it's a stereotype.
A stereotype, yeah. Which, I mean, if you watch The Simpsons, crazy thing is 8 out of 10, it's just kind of on. The weirdness about the stereotypes. There's a reason it's funny. But a trope is a wrong stereotype. It's just wrong. It doesn't apply.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm asking that. But, so I just said, hey, you've wrote some stuff down. What a guy would do is he would look at his notes, and whatever he wrote down, he'd have like one filter, which is, can I say this out loud to anybody? And if it's yes, then he's going to say it. Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, really. I mean, 8 out of 10 again on this rule, because there's always a spectrum, and we're going to talk about how we're all different, right? But we're trying to discuss it. We're trying to figure it out. And that's what I would have done. I would have looked down, and I would have been like, well, maybe not that thing. What's the next thing? Well, the Seahawks are doing well. It'd just be what would come out. And is that you and me, or is that man and woman? That's sort of the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we're here as Stop the White Noise to be that, to be prototypical, to be symbolic. Please don't make idols out of us. We're really just very normal, broken people. We walk with both feet and then need to have them rest, right? Like it's very, the morning involves the same things. Yeah. Nothing special about the people on the pictures. And that's one of my main messages forever to you. Not about me, just all of it. Stop the white noise. But so there you go. I'm sure you have a response to that, though. I think you've got something good to say.
I can immediately respond with, it's tough because I still look at the show as your show. And so then to suddenly be asked to lead the show is like, well, that's odd. Now I have to take on a different role than what I sat down expecting. But, you'd think I would get used to it over time.
Well, I'm always going to ask you a question at some point. Like the whole point is like after I've talked for a while, because that's what I consider leading the show. Like I just talked for 10 minutes, right? And then so I wanted to give you permission, though, since I got it covered, all that's coming back. Was there anything I didn't say that you want to make sure we talk about today? It's because while it is my show, it is our show in that we are what the show's about. And so the relationship of ownership between us with things and with life is what the show's showing to, I think, a lot of our viewers, anyone who's like viewing because they're married couples, right? Which is our target audience at the moment, right? Young mothers and young fathers, that they're just going to see us doing that. And we're not going to do it perfectly. Our answers are not always going to be spot on, but the iron will sharpen the iron is the belief. Even though, the screen, I really will contest to you, tends to minimize the obvious pain. And, when you're watching it through the screen, it's easier to imagine it as painless for you. A picture does it, and so, there's plenty of pain. But that said, again, was there anything else like on your mind this week that, you wanted to share and have be part of the show? Because I could say this. I think there are fans who watch for me. Mm-hmm. I think some of them are men and some of them are women. I think there are fans who watch for you. I think most of them are women. I don't think those women are watching if you're not here. They might. 8 out of 10 again, but it's important that they hear from you. And so that's what that moment every week is. Like you can just take it and run in any direction because it's not going to take over the show, but it is going to send the message to those who are looking to you, who you have relationships with, right? So hallelujah to that. And
yeah,
there you are.
Well, I'm glad you're here, all of you, and you, Jonathan. And I'm honored to be here as well. So, this morning I have been nursing a sore I overstretched or overused a certain muscle.
Okay.
This past week, I did a little bit more deep dive research into the lower back and how it works and how it functions and why as Americans do we have so much pain in our lower back. And it's oftentimes attributed to weakness, actually. Our core is just not super strong, and we think, oh, my core, I better go do some sit-ups. But you know, you actually have muscles that you can't target by doing sit-ups. And if you do too many sit-ups and not enough
it's the back one, right?
Back muscles.
Yeah.
Then it's where you like lay down on the ground and pretend like you're swimming.
Superman.
You're going to get weak. And so I have a weakness in my back, and I knew about that, but I was doing some we did some raking, and so the twisting motion of raking, and I did a lot of squatting, and then I went into a triangle pose, and I raised my back leg, and honestly and I knew about this, my left hip is just not strong. And I don't know if that has to do with curvature of the spine, if it has to do with just repeated injury that I've had, because that's always my spot. If I overwork myself, that's where it is. But anyhow, I did some reading, and the concept of continuing to work in a more gentle way on that space. Like, you don't just go and sit in a chair because you're sore, but okay, now I have to do more walking.
Right.
And less one-legged balancing.
Right.
If I'm going up the stairs, I need to actually go up each step instead of skipping steps, so that I'm taking that big lunge and then push off, you know?
Yeah.
So I have to do the little lunges and
rehab training, really.
Yeah, like, so when I do a cold shower, I also am doing different exercises while I'm cold showering. So instead of raising my leg up as high as a ballerina, I like keep it down low right now. So
I can empathize with all that. That's been my phase all week too.
But I can't stop. Like, you don't want to stop. And that was kind of what this book was helping me see. And then they were also talking about the importance of incorporating a relaxation breathing technique into your stretching and making sure that you are going into stretches in a proper way. Like, we like to slam our bodies into positions. And I think part of that is just because we're more like high intensity workout type people as Americans.
White belts.
And we don't see it as, you know, if you go into the Eastern culture, their whole society is built around balance and flow. And we want to be so distinct from that as Americans that we are like going after, like I said, the high intensity training, and where it's all tough and spurts of energy, instead of trying to flow into our motions, and how does one motion build off of another motion. And so
we value power over longevity, generally speaking.
Right.
And you see that in the motor industry, particularly.
Yeah.
American motors versus Asian motors is very evident. A lot of other things you can say about that, but yeah.
So, opening myself up to that concept and recognizing the Hebraic thought that actually coincides with the Eastern thought. So
Hebraic thought is Eastern thought as we would define it, although to call it Eastern thought now gives a lot of credit to China.
Which I think every time you think of, let's just say yoga.
Right.
India. You think of India, and then you think of, and then you don't automatically think Hinduism, Buddhism are separate. And what am I thinking? Like, we get it all lumped together.
It's all one big thing.
And so automatically we're at like
China now.
we're at Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. As Westerners, thinking on all of this, we go automatically to Dynasty Buffet, we all you can eat, and we're like, oh yeah, Buddha statue, and you know, and we just skip over the distinction that there are so many different things going on over there.
But what I want to say about though is that then Hebrew is Eastern thought, truly, because Eastern thought is an Eastern thought. Eastern thought is ancient thought, and Western thought is new thought. Greek, particularly, potentially, actually, the impact of Christianity. Who cares? Hebraic thought, the Hebrew Bible, is you can call it. It's Eastern thought, and you can just say that to people to make sense. Like, you study the Sons of Solomon, it'll make you an Eastern thinker. Okay. It'll help you understand Eastern thinking and that process.
I think though, if we talk about it that way too much without a lot of education in the beginning, people are going to be afraid of it. Like, for the longest time, I did not do
Western
yoga
thought.
because of, okay. Yes,
the very concept, but we need to educate, is what the West does. And the East just goes and does it. Ancient thought is just natural thought. It is in line with what is obvious. You don't have to educate a little girl to pick up a baby doll. You don't have to educate her. She'll do it wrong, so she needs to have a model and things. But like, so this, just see how easy it is for us, because we are Westerners, and as much as we study Scripture, it comes to us as the Bible, kind of Westernized, in English especially. So I don't want to say I've attained anything, but I can suggest again that the simple Sons of Solomon approach, the discipline itself, is quote unquote Eastern in its approach, in that it doesn't need any explanation other than itself for the one who just gives it any attention. And that booklet does not need anyone to tell you what to do with it if you can read. If you can't read, it's a different thing, right? You know, and a lot of people don't want to read or aren't willing to read, so you have to lead them in. But the idea here again is that the ancient way is like, I don't have to get the fool to understand. I just got to put him in like some bars so he can't get out. And he'll run straight and do a lot of work for me. Fool that he is, you know, and I'll actually be good to him, because, you know, he does a lot of work for me. And so there's like this the ancient way is just very, it's very earthy, a little bit stolid. It definitely pretends to be stoic, but the Stoics are all thinking about it too much. The proverbial way, you could call it the proverbial way. It is just the way things are. And that's what appeals to people about the East now, the Eastern thought, is that, oh, look, like their science, actually you can learn it and do it at home. Like it's the way things actually are. Like that appeals to us. And so, but this conversation in many levels is to attribute that to the East is, it's unfair to the West. What is the West? And that whole dynamic of East-West is a Greek postulate shoved upon history that Christians don't have to like live with. We have to live with an end times beast, you know, the government, what it's going to do, you know. So all that, yeah, I don't know. Did you take anything good from that? Or bad?
Well, thank you for expanding upon it. That was good. So it has helped me to have having a better understanding of Hebrew thought, biblical thinking, Old Testament thinking. I am now more capable of seeing God's design in the way that I don't really know how else to label it other than Eastern thought would look at the body.
Fine. Yeah.
So that has been instead of being so resistant to it and just shunning it because of our desire to not worship our ancestors, I'm able to see how much, I don't know, I guess the coming off of the ark and the biblical mindset is still, I can still find it in it. And so, I found that to be encouraging. And then to understand my body in a way that's, like you were saying, organic rather than just more Gnostic, like this concept of muscles, but I can actually apply quickly the theory, not the theory. It's they're not theories. It's just the fact that I have a way to push oxygen into, my lower body, my belly, and then that's going to do something that I can feel.
Yeah, right.
And that feeling then
it's not a theory though.
Goes
so
other
key.
places.
It's so key. What you're
and
wrestling
helps
at
you feel better.
And that's why it's not about education. It's about repetition or discipline or formation or habituation or any other thing. But it's not about education. It's not about having enough understanding of what could happen if and when you do it in a certain way. It's just, it's been done enough times that now it works. And that's how nature operates when things are in line with nature. Science doesn't want to believe that these days. And so there is a way to distinguish between East and West, if we want to talk differently, and it would be natural thought versus scientific thought. And hearing scientific thought is somewhat unnatural these days. So if you want to try to save science, you go for it. I still believe in hypothesis and testing and all that stuff. I'm just not sure the word's worth my vocabulary anymore. It means knowledge originally. So it kind of meant what we know to be true because we've studied it. Sadly, it's quite different. It's like parcel tongue these days. So natural thought, that's what is appealing about Hinduism. That's what is appealing about Islam to young men is natural. It's natural thought. It isn't thought that is like trying to explain something that could be. It's telling you what is, and then when you go and you try to find out if that's true, you find out it's true. So you learn very quickly that natural thought doesn't get questioned because what happens is you set your house on fire, right? And that's not in any way metaphoric, although it is too. The real things are the archetypes for a reason. That's big right there. That distinction, it's like clarification and justification in the relationship that they have to each other, which is something that Meridith, you and I had mentioned earlier or talked about earlier. And I said, it's something for me to think on later, to see that when you are, not you, Meridith, but when a person is searching for clarification on anything, you are in one way searching for justification of that thing. The relationship between those two things in the hunt can really help you distinguish, I think. So, is it worth searching for this justification? If you want to draw a straight line, go buy a ruler. So yes, it's worth it. Go justify a straight line, right? That's natural thought. And so you want to clarify what a straight line is in your own thought, so that you can think clearly, right? That all said, justification by grace through faith in Jesus Christ is when God does that to the creation on his own without our help, right? And so that word justification in Lutheran parlance, at least, can get kind of swept up in Jesus a lot. And we lose that it really just means to line it up. The word just means to line it up. So, when James starts talking about how you're justified by your works in front of your neighbor, well, yeah. I mean, if you got trash all over your yard and you're like, but I love Jesus, he's going to be like, who are you? Like, what? And so before your neighbor, you want to draw straight lines if you can, and that's metaphoric for sure. But natural thought is highly metaphoric, not because the metaphors aren't real, but because they are real. Fast as a lion, right? Well, it's metaphoric, but it's because lions are fast, right? So, language works by reference to other ideas. And what you and I are about a lot, Meridith, is the discovery of natural thought. That's great. That's a bonus points to the harmonization of our minds with the mind of Christ by the thoughts of Christ that are given in the texts of the Bible that are his word. Right? Hence, there is really no need for more when it comes to the Bible. This is true. Like when someone says, what study Bible should I buy, Pastor? I say, don't. Don't buy a normal Bible. This isn't to say that there aren't good things in study Bibles, but if you really want to be a user of the Bible, if you want to learn what the Bible says, stop thinking someone else has to tell you what the Bible says. There are things in the Bible that are hyper confusing. So, okay, here's my prescription for I'm going to talk to somebody as if they're here. You're a 23-year-old person who's never read the Bible before. And, read it all once as fast as you can. Don't make note of anything except for what made sense. And don't write down everything that made sense. Just write down where it was, right? Make large notes, outline the book. What do you understand on a cursory reading? And then go back and read that part forever. And even don't worry about the rest of it. Although what'll happen is there'll be threads. There'll be threads to more. You just pull on those threads and the whole thing will start to open. Now, if you go into the Bible by yourself with an agenda I'm going to prove how everyone always was wrong about what Jesus meant except me, and it heals people and lets me sleep with their wives. Okay, cult leader, done it before, been there. Lots of people doing this in history. We don't have to get rid of our trust in the Bible because these guys can do this. We should trust what the Bible says about wolves and what they do. It's what they do. So, does the Bible need anything more than what it is? Now, this is not to say that handing someone a copy of the book of Matthew by itself wouldn't be a great idea, right? Separately published so that they could just pick it up and read it. That's a good idea too. But again, all I'm questioning is the notion that we need preemptive something for God's word to actually function, to clarify it so that it can justify us, because we won't understand it if we just give them the book. See how little we trust it, right? And to throw them under the bus a little bit, but it really is kind of an amazing illustration of this. The Gideons as an organization spend a lot of time and money putting Bible translations, Bibles in hotel rooms all over the country, all over the world, and God bless them for it. You open that Bible, there's a catechism in front. And it's not a Lutheran catechism. It's not a Reformed catechism. No one would call it a catechism except for someone who knows what a catechism is. But it's a catechism. It's what it is. And it's not all wrong and it's not all right. But it's an explanation of the Bible before the Bible. And why? And I know why. The why is because if you hand this out as a tract to someone in America's consumer age, they're never going to get past Genesis 3. There's not. And so you're trying to find a way to get people to read the Bible. But rather than just, give out smaller portions of the Bible and trust in its power to do its work without you telling people it's from the Bible. They don't all have to read the Bible. You could just talk the Bible all the time. And then people are hearing the Bible all the time. If when you love your Bible enough to know what it says, so it's what you believe, what you think, who you are, because then that's what you're going to say. It's what's going to come out of your mouth at that point. So pursuing biblical talk and language, because it is reframing, because it does put us into the kingdom. That's what it is. The language is the kingdom. And it does translate, although Babel tries to steal it back with deconstruction. Look that one up. So, yeah, I went a couple places there, but that's really important stuff, I think. And you're writing something down, so I'll keep talking for a second when you do that.
The language is the kingdom.
Oh, man. Yeah, I had that somewhere else in here this morning. It's so true, though. I mean, that's how Jesus operates, right? My kingdom's not of this world. You know, his words are from another world, and they're in the world, right? But is the power of words, right? Show me your words. Where are they? Right? You can point at a book. Okay, you know, that's ink on a page. Where are the words? You know, there's letters. Okay. Oh, so if I see the whole thing, then that's a word. Okay. Well, it's not a word. You know, it's chicken scratches. It's printing. It's ink on paper. A word is something we all believe in and then ascribe concept to. That said, though, our God tells us that in the beginning was the Word, right? So that there's something about not understanding a word, what words are, that is what the image of God has made us, right? We have His words. We speak, not like the monkeys, not like the dolphins even, right? We speak. We have the words. And we know that when light and dark were split, it was the Word who is everlasting light, in whom there is no darkness at all, who made the created light with the dark to be the world He would love and then die for, right? And Trinitarian glory, incarnation and all. Words are His power given to man in creation before we fall. Like naming stuff, right? And it's how we were made to reign. We didn't need a sword to make the, donkey come close so we could talk to it, right? Back then. Jesus just demonstrates in His life, as do all the prophets and Paul, very much so, that kingdom isn't gone. It just is operating by trust alone in the words, which includes the capacity for martyrdom, but also the full expression of belief in salvation today, not just on the last day. And to reign with such words, to have that story be the one that you know. And so it's what you speak, it's what you say. There hasn't been a Christianity like that in America on any major level for a long time, really. Evangelicalism probably touched on it when it was first operating, but to just in Lutheranism before it came into English. I mean, I can't judge Lutheranism before it came into English. It was a machine. It was running, right? If you want to ask, along with birth control, but see, birth control happened a generation after English, so it isn't as though there weren't an order to things, and it was Lutheranism's translation into Anglicanism as a language, as a kingdom, as a reign, that kind of meant the end of Lutheran culture for what it was, because the language is the reign, is the kingdom. And then when it ties to your culture, when you're speaking it in your mother tongue versus in someone else's tongue, you're now learning their culture, you're learning their version of the kingdom. And so American Lutheranism, and everyone who studies us knows us, we're more reformed than old Lutheranism would have been, is our battle's always against reforming. Although that was true for the German Lutherans too, so maybe I shouldn't be too harsh on that. But back then, the reform guys had to come at you with swords to make you reform. It was really, really distinct. They didn't like each other at all. And now, I know I'm saying that we shouldn't be gentle to each other as Christians and kind, but the distinctions were lost with the language. That's the point. And this whole thing is about how the kingdom of Jesus Christ is words. And that we are the kingdom now, words He spoke into creation, that He has redeemed by the blood of Jesus, washed with His water and word, inhabited by His Spirit, so that we might be bearers of that word, like Mary, virgin, in impossible ways. How could it be? And that's what the squirrels got to think when they look at a Christian. I really am getting this more and more. Call me out on it if you have to. The Holy Spirit's inside of you. The Holy Spirit's God. The Holy Spirit is worshipped. Okay, so how does the squirrel worship the Holy Spirit inside of you without worshiping you? I think he does. I think he manages to worship the Holy Spirit without worshiping you, because that would be wrong to worship you. But I think he's kind of in awe of you, because he's like, whoa, that was not like the other ones. That was not just an animal, So that's the glory, right? And the power of the word itself as inhabitation, as God spirited. That's 2 Timothy 3. All scripture God spirited, God breathed, and useful. And so the kingdom is the words. Seek ye first the kingdom. all these things shall be given to you. And the wisdom of Solomon is not just a trope. It's not a trope. It's for reals, baby. It is powerful to read about the reign of the man of peace, son of David, king of Jerusalem, right? What his words are. The reign, proverb, the word proverb, mashal, is the word reign. Solomon's reign wasn't with a sword. They had swords. They like made them of gold. They didn't even need them. They're made of gold. It's useless. It's valuable, right? But it's pretty. It doesn't do anything. It's gilded. Blah blah. So he reigned with his tongue, and he wrote it all down in several books. One of which is so ignored, everybody ignores it. I'm still like, that one's a mystery to me. But like, not entirely. I got theories. But the other two are like, manual number 1 and 2 for you believe in Jesus now. Read this stuff, like a lot, over and over again, as much as you can. Gonna make you reign with the man of peace, king in Jerusalem, son of David, right? It's the words is everything. Scripture alone. It's not a trope. It's not just about, the Bible, we say that and then we do another thing. Because that's where, we have all these theories about atonement and about, I don't know, you pick what I believe in the atonement, by the way. I'm not saying I don't, but like we argue about all this stuff. And then you look at how we're arguing and we're acting like pagans. And then we walk away from acting like pagans while we argue to doing things the pagans do for their entertainment after they're done arguing with each other. And I'm not saying that the doctrines that we are idolizing so as to hate each other with them aren't true doctrines that must be maintained. I'm saying, you can make an idol out of your thought system. Very, 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 very easily, naturally, even like scientifically, especially. And so if you find a point where you're hating somebody because they don't believe what you believe, I mean, you don't know how Jesus looks at people then, because he loves even those who hate him. Doesn't mean he's not going to give justice. He's a man. He knows how to tie off the knot and let it be. Tourniquet. Got to do it. So that kind of wherewithal. But that's kind of what the conversation is going to be about a little bit more, because women have their own version of wherewithal, and I wouldn't want to make it sound as though only men have wherewithal. But there's, what is it that makes us who we are and distinct? And so that's where this idea from the conversation with Frisbee and I about the spectrum from Magnolia to Skillet, amongst those who are our fans. And it got into a really interesting conversation ultimately about Magnolia's impact on American art, and where does current consumer culture teach us about the worldview and landscape of American philosophy, American psychology, from what we're buying, right? From what we're buying and selling, from what's being marketed to us, and to who. And of course, it's fractured. There's lots of different stuff, and not everyone is into Magnolia, but Magnolia is pretty big, right? And why? Magnolia is much bigger than Skillet, I think. But still, Magnolia is talked about on the show because it's something that appeals to you, that then also when you bring it home, I'm like, yeah, sure. And so, it's something we have kind of pursued as a style, and I probably do like it a lot without knowing, but I don't really look at it. But I've never really been like, anything you brought from it, like, well, that's horrible. It's usually like, oh, that's cool, that's well done. But like Skillet is like the polar, bizarro opposite world. I mean, here is an independent, largely Christian, hard rock screaming band that is known for generally annoying others in some ways, like at least early on. And the guy's own story in life, and they're married, actually, two of them, and the touring nature of the band, all this stuff, they're just, everything about them is not marketable, except they're incredibly good at marketing their niche. They market incredible niche. And that niche is very masculine Christian man, with everything that our questioner is going to say is like, well, I'm not like that at all. Right. And so do I have to be like that? Or do I have to listen to music like that, like Skillet, right? Who, again, I hated Skillet for a long time. And it's just the words, it's what they say, to me. And as we go through this, like so much about style to me has nothing to do with anything until after I know what it means and what they're saying. I care about the message. I really do. I could maybe listen to a song that has a message that I don't like once and nod my head. Okay, I'm at a party. I'll be nice. But I'm not gonna put that on. I don't need that in my world. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough space to fill up my head with songs that are worth forgetting. But, so Magnolia to Skillet, what I like about what Skillet does is they repurpose biblical promises and adopt them as if they are their own, and then they shout about it, and that's very fulfilling. But again, the point of bringing them up is more about the style and how it really isn't. If Magnolia is going to throw their new gala opening, Skillet's probably not the headliner, right? And yet here we are in our life with, well, that's who we are, really. You're not her, I'm not him, but there's a lot of my life that kind of resonates with the style that Skillet does have. I've always been into hard rock, always, and then you'd have to say, I think, if I'm right, about what Magnolia has captured for you, but I would say there is something genteel about it. Like it appears thought through and toward value and beauty. But I want to let you speak for yourself on that. That's my guess of why you like Magnolia.
Honestly, what attracted me to it at first was the fact that it was husband wife.
As a industry. Mm-hmm.
Right, because they were originally the fixer-uppers, right? So
did somebody tell you? Oh, because you just knew them as that first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've never known them as that really. So okay, yeah.
Yeah, and from there, so you say like if they're gonna have a gala opening, they probably wouldn't have Skillet. They might.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of who Chip is.
Okay, you're right, because he's got his own little edge to this, right? So, but when they went Magnolia, they really started just promoting her more than him, it seems. Yeah?
So he's the businessman. He's the mind behind it. She's the face.
Yeah.
He had been interested in business for a long time, entrepreneurship from a very early age, to a point, like he talks about a story in college where they had Scantron sheets, and he learned that he could actually make money by going to the bookstore in college and buying up the supply of Scantrons, and then before quizzes selling them all to his schoolmates.
I bet he could scalper.
Just by a little bit extra. It was like 5 cents up.
Hey.
But his mind works that way.
Sure.
She
arbitrage.
Always had enjoyed the, like, what is it called? Refinishing, architectural, interior design. Mm-hmm. And so he saw that and was able to, and he also has been kind of the handyman.
But she's the eye, right? Like she's the eye. She sees it and he does it, I think.
Yeah, so she'll tell him the plan, but then he problem solves because, oh no, there's this load bearing wall or whatever that we have to work around. So then they work together, and so then they stopped with Fixer Upper, and they started their own thing. But even before Fixer Upper had become part of their life, they had. She would take antiques that she'd found, refurbish them, or create new out of old, and she'd fill her home. she'd like stage her home with it and have once a year an open house. So people would buy everything that she had created out of her home.
That's cool.
And then over time of seeing how successful those ventures were,
sure.
they decided, let's open a little shop.
Yeah.
And she had always wanted to, so yay. So it's very much a story of seeing each other's strengths and elevating.
Yeah. Or working together through something, right? Unified. But then that required a certain level of get her doneness, make it happen in him, that, he's good at seeing opportunities. He saw the opportunity of his wife's talent and then put his workhorse and his problem solving to serve that.
Yeah. And the other side of it is that, so he thought there's this school in Waco, and he was like, well, if I buy up all these homes in this rundown neighborhood, I can fix them and then I can rent them to the or whatever.
Whoever's coming through to that.
Yeah. I can create more of I can expand the campus essentially, so that it's not a dangerous town with a university, but instead it's a university town.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's what he did. And alongside of her,
so he saw that
they'd flip
as something
homes
he could do while
together.
He was building her, and it came out together. That's really
so
neat.
So then Fixer Upper is them actually merging both of that, those goals, and
Into
then
a
people
show.
watching as it's happening.
Which is how they got as big as they are, but if
then
you
they
look at
pulled
their
away.
experience, it's not really a good experience to go that route usually.
Yeah, they pulled away.
Hunger Games tell you
and
all you
now
need to know, really. Truly.
They've come back with their own thing. So they actually own the channel now.
Okay, so that's interesting, and I know what you like about the story in it, and I hope that is where we are in our own way. The stylization is more my curiosity at the moment.
So the style.
So what they do style wise, well, that's just where it fits with them and Skillet, right? And pushing towards something, which I think is a good idea to consider, which is, where are we in American pop culture, mass culture, generally mainline culture, right? Like it's a target, right? Where are we in actual produced art history? So modern art tells you that the people who are running it are insane, have no mind or eye, and have lost all touch with reality, probably are worshiping demons. You can tell that. Look at the modern art. Very evident. Okay. There isn't anything there but chaos. Yeah. But, whatever they spent, all that money to do in your town on the corner that now you drive by and like it's a traffic accident waiting to happen a bunch of times, right? Like that big modern statue. Like there aren't a whole bunch of copies of that for sale at Target. There's not. They're not going to be. Why? Well, because it's ugly, it's stupid, it's meaningless, a bunch of reasons. But so what that tells you is that, elite culture and mass culture are very distinct. And mass culture, which you can call it kitsch, mass produced as well, nonetheless is going to tell you on some level a spectrum of what people are actually after, right? And I'm not saying that every niche is the same, but I am saying that there are going to be higher and lower niches. There are going to be there's going to be an art that is revealed over time through things. And what's fascinating to me about Magnolia is that if you try to define it as a style of art in history, well, they're not making paintings. Okay. Well, art isn't just painting something. Okay. So the reason they talked about the Gilded Age the way it was is because everything had metal on it. Everything was coated with metal. Yeah. And now we have a little more of a plastic age, right? Everything's coated with plastic. But what I see in Magnolia that I find appealing and beautiful and amazing, and I think puts us at an interesting place in history, is what I can only call hillbilly Baroque, which is super cool. I love it. The Gilded Age is what Baroque is. Like everything had gold and silver on it if it could. And it was a time of wealth and prosperity. And hillbilly is not something you would normally associate with that. But when you find good old Americans, and they're from flyover states, places, well, golly, we sure look like hillbillies to everybody else. I think that's what they think we are. That's why they talk about flyover states. And yet, if you look at our culture and where it is, while the rest of the world's tearing itself down, what are we doing? We're in the Gilded Age. We got people making beautiful stuff. And what's beautiful about Magnolia, it functioned combined with glorious fragility, right? So it struck me as I was thinking about drinking out of a glass mason jar, right? Which this is like the peak of stability and fragility as we can make it, beautified with a nostalgic post-industrial America flair. And why don't we just have some Edison bulbs hanging under the tree while we're at it? They're selling it to us. We're doing it ourselves. I don't know. It's where we are, in history. How do you define your own time in history? But I like hillbilly Baroque. I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. MAGA Trump, hillbilly Baroque, right? They won a Napoleon. And it's not that far away, probably politically. I haven't looked at those connections yet, so dig on them yourself if you want to. What's nice about if we actually are in like a subculture Gilded Age, unless they blow up the sky, it means whatever else they do, we're going to keep making good stuff. The Gilded Age doesn't just go away overnight, right? So whether we can keep using the tools we have, whether the electricity keeps flowing, those are things I think we should put our minds to now to make sure we establish grids that are reliable, right? Or backups, things like that, for your house, for your neighborhood, for your church, long term, if you're an HOA, it makes a lot of sense, but blah, blah, blah. We live at a time when we have the freedom to have nobility who still produce good influence. And if you can see the overlap between what would have been a queen or a princess's impact on a village and fame in any way today, and that we can see that there are still those who are famous that are pursuing beauty and functionality, that means America's not over yet, right? And as much as I think there's a lot of problems with our monetary system, and it might be over, and our language is in a terrible state, it's encouraging to me to think of hillbilly Baroque as hillbilly is good. See, it's good. A little more bluegrass in our lives, make things go further. So, I don't know, those thoughts. You can go anywhere with it, but I do think that is something of what we see then in you and I in Magnolia. Why it appeals to me, even though it is more feminine, is because there's this natural, earthy, underlying fields and hills. Yeah, I got a beard and I'm gonna go hunt. Behind it, and that is Chip, right? That is sort of his mentality. And it isn't exactly Duck Dynasty, but Duck Dynasty hits the same trajectory, hits a major crowd and archetype. And I've never watched that or don't really have any interest in it. But I know, again, there's this massive subculture that's there. And my call out to all of y'all is just let's stop relying on all of their systems. Let's build on ours and start with the language of the scripture first. So, yeah, that was a lot of me again. No, that's good. But I like to hear
you have a lot on your mind today.
I have a ton on my mind. I like to hear what you think, though, because it helps me reframe. And then a lot of times you'll bring up things I wouldn't have thought of. So
our right from the get-go of our marriage, when we were like, what would you say? So I think you asked me. Okay, listeners, let me back up. Let's give you a little bit of insight. So when we were first married, we decided there would be something called the veto power that was given to both of us in our home. Now, whether or not that was a good idea, we'll just leave that for maybe another discussion or a discussion in a few minutes. But this idea was to avoid having doilies on furniture. My husband was concerned, or having every piece of furniture be black.
Which was like an instinct I had for some reason. Yeah.
Something that I didn't really like. And it's not that, I didn't like furniture you picked out. I do like furniture, but yeah, you tended towards dark and I thrive under light. So you asked me, what kind of style would you say you have, Meridith? And I was like, what I'm really attracted to is something that I can only say would be Asian Victorian.
Yeah, that's how we decided it way back when. Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly think that Magnolia, so you would call it hillbilly Baroque, and I respect that. I can't envision it because growing up where I did, I think I have a little bit more of a concept of what hillbilly is.
Oh, it's a very negative term.
And so I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not seeing this. But,
Amen.
But I respect that you do. And so I want to know more about it.
Well, we're not Baroque either. Honestly, we're not Baroque either. So it's using the two terms to create a paradox that if you know both terms in their history, I think it's hard to ignore it once you put it together. Now, maybe hillbilly is not the right first term, but it's supposed to be a negative term.
I see. So, I found the minimalism of Magnolia refreshing. And honestly, it's not Magnolia, it's Hearth and Hand. That's the name of their.
Oh, okay.
It's just Magnolia is their store name and their magazine. Let me talk about that
because there's a guy in here named Miles who's really mad that we haven't explained what Magnolia is yet. So, Magnolia is a magazine for ladies or a Target brand that.
Well, the Target brand is Hearth and Hand. So when you see this husband and wife on a billboard in Target and they're surrounded by home furnishings anywhere from kitchen to bathroom to bedroom, that is a couple who owns down in Waco, Texas, a store called Magnolia, and it's kind of it's become bigger than that though. Now it's on this property called the Silos, and there are two historic silos in Waco where they have a baseball diamond and they have a store and a cafe and a cafe bakery. So it's expanded over the years, but they started out just with their store Magnolia. And that's what Jonathan has grabbed on as just kind of naming all of it. So then magazine they too, right? Now have, a magazine that they've been putting out for a few years. And every, I'm trying to remember how many times, I think it comes out 4 times a year, but it's always the wife on the cover in some sort of pose. And that's just what it is. So, I do not subscribe to the magazine. No. I have stopped reading the magazine because I did not think that okay. So 3 years ago when people started waking up from the dream state that we had been kind of put into, I do not believe that the Christianity that Chip and Joanna Gaines and their family were exposed to prior to the wake up that we were given helped them to go through this major shift in a way that made them cling tightly to the truths of Scripture. I think it allowed for a lot of the agendas of today's culture, American culture, and then now the world's culture to be shoved into what they believed. So I found the articles to be less than helpful. They never came out and said they supported one way or another, but they didn't say they didn't support. And so that's what bothered me.
Yeah. And I really respect that a lot. And so for me, again, the whole thing is less about anything that they are known for aside from why they're successful, the things that they're doing and promoting that are wide enough that a lot of people want that, right? And I find that fascinating style-wise just to talk about it. And as I tried to say probably too longly before, when it comes down to it and I realize where we are, we're the colonies in our Baroque phase, I think. Well, that's hopeful. And I would hope everyone would agree with me. If you know anything about history. And again, hillbilly, yeah, we're the colonies. Yeah, it's a negative term. Do you think anyone in the world looks at the United States flag right now and thinks positively about it? You know what we are? And we're not the ones in charge. We're their slaves. Living in the woods. I know we got nice slave houses. We do. They're great. I like mine. I'll keep being a slave. I'm not going to pretend I'm not one. Right? I'm a bond servant. 30-year mortgage, baby. You know? And that's because, you know, I'm a normal guy. Like most people, right? So, someday maybe we'll get out of that. I want to answer this guy. I appreciate, Miles, that you're here. Thank you for coming here. I'm going to answer some of your questions. You know, you could work on gentleness, I think, a little bit. We gave you the reference to Magnolia there, and I appreciate it. That's a good question since I make up whatever things are. I latched on to Magnolia, so that clarification is good. But then some of these other questions are... I
kind of never finished my story.
Worth talking about.
Can I quick finish my story about our...
Yeah.
So the Hearth in Hand style is very closely illustrative of what I visualized as Asian Victorian. And it is simple enough that you can put it in a kitchen or a dining room or a bathroom and it doesn't take over. One of the concepts behind the way Joanna Gaines decorates is that she likes to decorate with candles and plants so instead of adding color with something like a chair that might go out of season, you decorate with color by adding things that are consumable or things that are organic. So a plant is organic and a candle is consumable. It won't stay there forever if you burn it. And organic, it's going to live or die depending on your care of it. So, that kind of illustrates your ability to care for your home and your possessions. So if if we were to contrast this with the pioneer woman, who I also find to be a very fascinating woman as entrepreneur, and I do find a lot of joy in her style as well, which is completely different from the Hearth in Hand. Like, she has all flowers. Pioneer Woman is all about flowers and bright colors. And if you put that in your kitchen, that is going to definitely set a color scheme for the room, or it's going to, it's just a loud presence. And so I try to be careful with that because I cannot change the items that I own on a seasonal basis. I need to be able to use an item until it breaks or needs to be replaced from use. And so for me and the budget that we have, I find it's Hearth in Hand to be something that kind of helps us along with those different goals. It's not too feminine, and they are practical for decorating around in whichever way either of us wants to.
Cool. I'm going to answer some of Miles'
questions. I know
he may be gone,
excited about
and
that.
so I'm not really excited.
Good. Oh,
I'm not really excited. Been trying to get to it for a while. He may be gone now, but it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do it though. So Miles has a bunch of different questions, and there's some connected to this, there's some not. I want to come back to this because I care a lot about what you just said.
Sure.
That's what I want to talk about. But I kind of, this guy's, said a lot. He stirred up the comments a bit. He might mean well, might not. But he did ask about where the maxims are coming from. So if you're watching RevFisk.com, or if you're watching Twitter or anything like that, you're seeing my daily maxims. He says, are these your own freeform translations out of Scripture? And the answer is, yep, you got it right there. Boom. Yeah, good for you. It wasn't that tough, was it? And where are they though, huh? Right? Providing the chapter and verse, but not the name of the book, ? Yep. Yep. And on purpose? Yep. So, but cool, you found my riddle. Can you find more, or are you gone already because you don't have any patience, which is what you said later? I'll leave that one in your hands. Are they GPT-isms? No, not at all. That's my own work. Derived from actual scripture and actual Sun Tzu? Yep, absolutely. Every day. Yeah, there we go. And she goes on some other stuff that's more deep, but he wanted the reference to Magnolia, which we helped him with that if he's still here. He does at one point say he's not a woman, or is not a man, or didn't say if he's a man, so he is a nice neutral in most languages. But he then accuses me of a restart. That does bother me when people like just kind of come through and don't give any attention and then accuse me of things. But, you know, it is what it is. It wants to get to the point. Can you explain? Wants to follow us, understand more. Agrees with our problems in the church. I'm here, bro. So, yeah, dude. So, well, keep listening. But like, you know, if you're gonna walk into a place and say I don't have any patience, then I'm gonna say you're free to go. I don't got any patience for people who don't have patience. I pretty much have patience to the world ends for anybody else. So, yeah, we're talking about culture and style, and also trying to generate a understanding between us actually as a couple in front of you. And that's how this show is every week. We continue to work on our marriage. We continue to work on our family. We continue to work on our neighborhood. We continue to promote the Hebrew Collegium. We continue to be members and pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Rockford. All this stuff, you know, caring for, praying for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod while watching it run itself into the ground, and all these kinds of things. But wanting to be biblical people. And yeah, so yeah, I'm not looking for followers though. You had that, you know, if I want more followers, I'm not really looking for that. I'm looking to seed biblical speaking into as many corners of the world as I can, whether you know it or not. I don't care. So if I put out a Bible thought that you read and you're just confused by where it came from, it doesn't mean it didn't move you as a thought. In fact, it probably moved you more because you're too worried about where it came from. You didn't even know what it said and how much it moved you. And if you're scrolling every day, I guarantee that's happening to you all the time. That's how that stuff works. That's my game. Latest restart. One restart, 2020. One restart. Trying to understand post YouTube age what the mediums are good for. That takes some work, man. You got to throw spaghetti at a wall a few times. So, restart. I love you. I'm glad you're here, Miles. Hang out. And yeah, thank you to Darth Mick. Oh, cancel. Darth Nick, who points out that he is used for unknown genders. I'm trying to recapture that in my writing. It's really hard to do because we're so trained to say he or she, but talk about obtuse and boring poetry. Just say she then, for goodness sakes. And they started doing that eventually. It's kind of amazing. Or
that's confusing.
They do it paragraphically and all this stuff. Yeah, right. So, hallelujah. You're writing more stuff down. I'm going to go ahead and promote the Hebrew Collegium, the website there. Hopefully we'll be getting some attention this winter. But the Spiritual Retreat Center for Biological Males here in Rockford, Illinois, dedicated to Psalms, Proverbs, and exploration with your hands is well in action. We've got 2 guests there right now this week, a week longer and a little bit more long-termer. And really cool from my part, as I've had a lot of hands-off on this visit from someone who'd been through before, but just hands off, but very, you know, clear boundaries. And a lot of it learned last year. Like I couldn't have done what I'm doing right now for this kid. God bless you. If we hadn't had the last year and then the gift of who our current resident is as well. But like, it's all just, a tear from my eyes. So beautiful. It's like functioning the way it should. So it's there for your use. A place to come get away, spend 3 days, 5 days, have a sabbatical for yourself, a rest in the Word of God as a male, and run into some others that are Christians and care for the same kind of thing. So there you go. That was my advertisement while you were finishing up your notes there.
Yeah.
So all the answers to Miles, but I want to get back to, you were talking about the way that the various, what you were doing was you're giving a little, all right. When I'm making art using a computer, by coding it with English, which some people call artificial intelligence, if that helps you. A key to not just having the computer generate random garbage is to let it know who you are. And you do that quickly with reference to influence. Now, that's not exactly how I would write it. I'm teaching you a concept, not a code. So, 3 references to 3 magazines will produce a certain summary feel. The computer's really good at that. Really good at that. And it's stupid. A lot of other stuff is really good at that. And I think we can do it too. We're really good at that. And so what you gave was a little bit of a lineage of your style, right? And that's good, because then what our conversation is about how our style, you and I, is both sold to us by the American consumer market. And how do we know that? It's because there's magazines about it. We think we feel it, and they planted it, right? So there's that conversation, which doesn't mean we have to hate the glasses they sell us. If they sell us great glasses to drink out of, that's okay, right? But don't be duped. Don't pretend these are your ideas. Don't pretend it's your feelings, smell, style, color, whatever. You're framed and formed by the inputs around you. And the more that you're swallowing everything, the more you're going to just reflect whatever the majority shove is. And I would suggest again that that's a bit of a hidden dialectic. Demons don't like to play in the light. So that's why I'm interested in the conversation. I think, because here's the thing about hillbilly Baroque, and I'm going to stick with it because I don't think it's, I embrace it. I love it. I'm from the Highlands of Scotland once upon a time. And so I don't mind the foothills. They're a good place to be. In fact, I went to a high school where we were called the Foothillers. Anyway, that was distracting. Grossmont. That really is a throwback. Lots of memories. The thing about the Baroque age, its weakness was you just can't keep it up. You can't put gold on everything, right? And there's a fragility to the Baroque age. It required a certain civility. And, well, again, now you can see where there's hope where we are, and now there's not hope where we're. As civility disappears, now the gold doesn't stay on the polished beam in the middle of the town. Now someone steals the gold, right? Because civility is gone. Not just that the guy's hungry, but in fact, someone would think of doing such a thing, right? As opposed to no one would think of doing such a thing. So we're in that phase right now where we're moving toward where people will do such things that no one would think of doing before. And it's all over, and it's different places. So again, you can attach to the main narrative and be like, well, all of America's falling. Well, yeah, if America's a unified narrative, we have fallen. It's over. Olympus is done. No one's fallen the White House. White House ain't fallen the White House. Huh? That doesn't mean like it's all Escape from New York everywhere, Fallout 4 everywhere, all the time. So what's your neighborhood like? Right? It's not the only one. Someone was just telling me about how one of our members, we got a lot of great members. They travel, and one of them has a kid in school in Iowa, which isn't too far away. It's great. And 3 hours. Great. Good for them. And they went and visited, and they were talking about something, and they were asking these questions about being prepared for winter and sports. And I can't remember if it was, preemptive inoculating or if it was masks or whatever, but they were talking to the coaching staff about it. And they said something, and they were kind of, how these conversations are too. Like it's almost like talking about, religion, where people are just afraid to bring it up. But it's because it's communism. They kind of bring it up a little bit, and they just laugh. It's like, this is Iowa. 2020 was a long time ago in Iowa. That's what they said at the university, right? Like a different country. I don't know. I wasn't there. It's a story from far away. The streets are paved with cheese, for all I know. I don't know, but I do know that the Olympus has fallen, fracturing of America, decivilization of America, which is literally the decivilizing of people's conversation, attitude, demeanor, behavior. That is not the same in every place. And there are places where there are still some good goads and some strong roads and some good roots, and they're worth building on. And I honestly have had to believe that Rockford's such a place. because I've asked God enough times why I'm here, and I've looked around enough now to see, oh, look, there's some good frames here. There's some broken stuff too, lots of broken stuff. That's the power of Rockford. If you ever want to come through and just see it, the power of Rockford is it's where all the other cities are going. It's already a whole city that has done it, and you can see how the power will retain an empty framework around which they operate while the rest goes to poo. And that there still will be then life there, but it operates in a very different way. And Illinois, Illinois is a place. It's a place. But it's kind of like the future, right? So you can get a taste of it. I don't know why I was even talking about all that. I do know Hebron, style, art, future. You took down a lot of notes, so there must have been something worth coming back to.
Well, I'm just trying to actually follow where we're going. So you were saying that you have a claim on this Baroque concept because of your ancestry.
Oh, no. I have a claim on being a hillbilly because of my ancestry. Yeah. The Baroque concept is just a historical fact of what Baroque is. Like, if you study art history, Baroque means something, right? And it doesn't mean, as the joke was, it's broken, right? That's funny. A pun. It's good. Someone wrote it in the comments. But I'm not sure. Baroque sounds almost like it's.
Well, it probably
Greek.
has something to do with the fact that you were talking about how fragile it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I don't know if is it a term for when you're dealing with history.
The joke.
You have it's the joke itself is a trope. It's been made many times.
I see.
Trying to label history, you have what people inside of a time think they are. Then you have what the people right after them said they were. And then every time after, you have what everybody else says later about them. And sometimes those things are the same, but not usually. Usually those things change. And so the label Baroque, I don't know if that's from within or without of the actual time. But what was powerful about the time was you had a contrasting capacity to achieve amazing things. That was then in some ways squandered on trifle. And I almost got to it with the Magnolia glasses comment, because the drinking out of the mason jar is everything about it, both in its beauty and in its sin. And to have this life you're going to live where you don't have the sinful condition in your beauty, it's impossible. There's thorns. So you're going to have to harmonize it somewhere. And that's where I think hillbilly Baroque's pretty harmonized. I like it. It's nice, right? We understand nature has to be dealt with. But there's a fragility to it. And, they're not plastic cups. There's a reason people use plastic cups. I don't like the health implications of plastic cups, but there's a reason people use plastic cups, because they don't break. Mm-hmm. And so, you're always giving and exchanging, whether it's for beauty, whether it's for purpose. And to me, again, hillbilly Baroque, someone can be upset about the hillbilly concept. I think that just means they don't understand Americana, mom, apple pie, and baseball. That's hillbilly right there. And it's great. We're the colonies, we're the backwaters. There's something about us, this good old roughneck, rugged people. And we don't need the Yankee and the city man coming in and telling us what to do. And that's all hillbilly. Most people's image of the hillbilly is made from Hollywood, largely to make it sound like the hillbillies are people that you should stay away from. And you know what? The hillbillies are like, you go ahead and say whatever you want to say if you stay away from us. That's great. That's kind of how that mindset is. And that was an American mind for a long time. It's not anymore. We've been formed by the hive of the TV now. But there was this independent thinking thing. And A Brief History of Power, Adam and I talk about this a lot, I think. I think it's what he's after a lot. Not hillbilly per se. I'm not sure that'd be his favorite term for it. I'm talking about art culture when I say hillbilly again, though. Because the idea of the garden with the lights in the trees, there's just something there merges, and it goes from very poor to impossible at the same time. Like, who would put light bulbs in a tree outside? Incandescent light bulbs break in the rain. Who would do that, right? And obviously, we found ways to not do that, right? We have plastic trees in our houses for Christmas, so we don't have to deal with the problems, right? We find ways, but the whole prospect of it is like, what happens when the country without a history has enough money to make whatever it wants to make? I think that's a pretty important question right there, whatever else I said today. So, oh, cool. Darth Mick tells us the term Baroque derived from the Portuguese Baroque, meaning irregular pearl or stone. It refers to a cultural and art movement that characterized Europe from the 17th to 18th century. Yeah. It's like a golden age in a lot of ways. But they had a civilization. They had a civility about them. But that's exactly what Magnolia, why Hearth and Home appeal. They call it Hearth and Home, really?
Hearth and Hand.
Hearth and Hand, okay. Why they appeal is because in an age where there's, on your media stream, there's so much chaos, here, look, this normal thing. And it's a throwback to nature, and it's a throw forward to like the power to be over nature with electricity. Like it's very, or with the shaping of glass or manufacture again, right? So everything about them is still mass produced. You're not making your own cup, right? So it's fascinating. The whole religion of consumerism is fascinating. And as a Christian, you can eat at the marketplace, right? So you got to go shopping for your food and whatever other things you want to put up in your house. But this conversation does overlap with then idols, and I think of, there was that documentary we watched a long time ago about, it was called Spinning Plates, I think. And there was this Mexican couple that had their restaurant out in the middle of somewhere, and on a dusty road, it looked like, I guess. But they had a house that was a very small house, but the inside of the house was wall to wall covered with small statuary of
little crystal statues,
pink and purple and
shaped
children and animals and all manner.
Yeah.
But the man probably wasn't out shopping for these himself. Maybe he was, but probably not. Okay. But what struck me was not just how much money they spent on that versus their store closing and all this kind of stuff. That was interesting. But Baroque, like, you have enough time to decorate. There's something there about wealth that's really potent. You have a wealth of time if you are even thinking about decorating. And the tendency of what the Baroque age kind of teaches us is that let go, it kind of gets ugly pretty quick, actually. We tend to overdo it. The Gilded Age isn't coming back soon as a style straight up, because if you look at a wall of gold and silver, it's actually not that pretty. Right. So highlights, right? All of this, we're just talking art today, right? And in context of man and woman a little bit, because what I want to shift to is where this our questioner is going to be, which, what's a man look like? What's a woman look like? Well, it's taking place inside of some other art stream or art culture or expression of spirit. I don't know. What word do you want to use? The Bible talks about a people having a soul, our soul. The Germans would talk about the Volk, the people. It was just who we are, and that there's a total to us. And it does happen by means of stories if you are a people. Now there are many peoples these days. It's the age of the Gentiles and all this, but in this time where, if you're going to try to be an American and be proud of it, there's only certain options of society available to you culturally, certain things that are being, that are promoted. Where does man and woman and the real fight for man and woman fit in that? And your recognition that Magnolia wasn't going to take a stand on that, that Hearth and Hand wasn't going to take a stand on that, and you removing yourself from their stream is insightful, because for all of the postulating that he is a man and she is a woman, and they work together. If you can't separate yourself from the beast's financing systems, and you show yourself willing to sell on that point particularly, it's just a matter of time really until the whole thing goes that way.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting side comment to this whole story. I recently have been not purchasing Hearth in Hand because one of the places you go to get it is Target.
Right.
And
speaking of, right.
Right. And so it's really challenging for me to go into Target. I do go in occasionally because they carry something they carry a hair product I cannot actually physically get online. I can't buy it from its own self, which is strange.
Right. Well, because
but they carry it
through Target. There's probably an agreement there.
And you could find Hearth in Hand things, I think, on Amazon, but anyhow, I've slowed down quite a bit.
Recognizing that looking at things made us unhappy with what we had was a big one for both of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any picture book coming in that's like, hey, buy this, like it just doesn't give you much. And so it's far better to be at home and discover I need a thing. I will go hunt for the thing than to peruse a bunch of things. And so that learning for both of us was and continues to be a pretty big piece.
Well, and exactly, but stopping and thinking about what am I supporting and what, if I have this item in my home, it's not just that I have a spoon rest that says spoon on it.
Right.
But it shows other people who recognize, oh, I know where you got that. I know who makes that.
Right.
It shows that I'm a supporter of that. And in my journey of trying to find a simpler life, I am more conscientious about what does my life say and what do I stand for, and why is it that 3 magazines are who I can describe myself as? Why isn't it 3 Bible stories or 3 accounts from the scripture or 3 Psalms? So to
don't
me,
beat yourself up on that too much. It's a good distinction.
Well,
but
I say it with I recognize that. Like I say it hesitantly because I still do go. I mean, if you come to Hebron and stay there, you'll notice there are several items in the kitchen and throughout the home that are from Hearth in Hand. They're produced by them because it is a masculine look, and it's super hard to find things that are classy, well made, and masculine. Oftentimes it looks quite feminine. So I guess I'm just trying to show a little bit of my struggle, a little bit more of deeply of the story, because I would hate for people to think, oh, well, Meridith, she supports this, she likes them, and then to dive hard into it, because I really don't. Like I had said before, I no longer read the Magnolia journal.
So it's really a very fine line that you're dancing around. So I want to say something about it, because the idea that I send a message with what I do, I send a message with what I own, I send a message with what I say, is true. Branding has a religious aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're also free in Christ.
Right.
And what you're free for is not to commit yourself to some virtue of theory that leads to me never engaging the world because I'm above it. But instead, a capacity to see what is good for the people who are the people of God, particularly today. Mm-hmm. And so while indeed the machine that is Target will carry on with their agenda of whatever it is, you buying or not buying a Skillet there is not going to change that, but it might get the skillet for the person who needs it today.
Right.
And so the freedom has to remain.
Yeah.
Even while the awareness that I'm saying stuff has to remain. It's a tension, though. You don't reconcile this with a black and white. You live between these two things.
I think that what has changed in my approach is I give myself that moment of pause to be to be kind of more psalmistic, to be like the Psalms. Like I take a selah before I go into whatever store I'm going to go into, or before I decide, am I going to go to this store today? If I know that I know the products in each store well enough because I've been there enough to know pretty much what the price of things is and where to find it. And so it's easy. But I also can recognize now how much of my soul I'm going to lose by going into that marketplace and experiencing whatever messaging is being pushed back at me as I go and seek that item and then take it to the register and leave. So I ask myself, is it worth it? I love the concept of being free because there is this item. God has, right now, God has provided heat for us through our forced air heaters. So God be praised. And we can turn the heat up as high as we need to be comfortable. Recognizing that one day that might not be there is okay, but I don't have to live in that state now. Yeah. So I can recognize a store, I can recognize a company for what it is, and I can also recognize that that it will take a toll on my soul to encounter it, to engage it. And so how much am I willing to give to that or lose, I guess? How much am I willing to lose of myself in order to attain this item?
So is it worth it? It's a really good question to ask. And then, the layers of what that can mean. Again, trying to see that ideally if you're buying something, you're buying it for a good reason, right? Like that's what it's about. The argument about branding and extricating yourself from, this evil system, so et cetera, where that really falls apart is that, so then you left Target and you went to this other store that was more righteous than Target, and then you used $1.
Right. You just can't escape that.
You used an idol, an actual idol, a physical one with a face on it and everything. And just like of old, nothing's changed.
You drove in the car that was created by what kind of people?
Well,
and you
borrowed the pagan vehicle.
Had the gas from
to
what
use their
country?
petrol.
Okay.
But really the dollar itself, though, the dollar itself is this weekend, Matthew 22 is our appointed text, and given to Caesar. And the religion and the use of finances are so intertwined that they are not distinguishable for pagan men, I think. They just worship the dollar. They don't know how not to. They don't talk about it as worship. It's just what your animal nature does. It worships the power represented by the face, the belief, the story behind the face. So the point is, you're not going to extricate yourself from that world. We had one guy on the Dark Shore Universe Discord for a while who was just so upset that no Missouri Synod pastors would come out and just say, well, we all have to get off the dollar right now or we're not church. And you say, what? Anyone who would say that's going to have the look on your face from everybody he's talking to. But his point was, if we really want to be perfect, we have to not use the dollar. Well, you're right. You're right. It's in fact sinful to use the dollar in the sense of it's a twisted system. The inflation shows you that. Mathematically, it's dishonest. It's paper fiat money. We can argue monetary policy. I'm not trying to say I don't have dollars and use them. I do. I use them freely as what they are. Power to do something good today. Not something that I can keep so I can trust in myself or in it tomorrow. Right? That's massive right there. And it's all there in render unto Caesar. That'll come. But so I bring that up because don't beat yourself up over trying to escape connections to extended evils far away. But certainly when it tolls your actual soul to go into the store and you feel it, right? Well, goodness gracious, pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of that question, like today, do I have enough in me to encounter that? And sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. Yeah. And so it will redirect where I go.
Yeah, that's interesting.
For what I'm needing.
It's more about not wanting to walk into the space for me. Mm-hmm. That really is something. Huh.
Yeah. And honestly, swimsuit season is harder.
Sure. Yeah.
It's odd because it never had been before, but now it's become grotesque, and I don't appreciate it.
Well, that's again, so civilization versus de-civilization.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? No definition of gross anymore or beautiful.
Yeah. And well, and that's what really opened my eyes was when I started encountering swimsuit season after waking up and realizing I don't know what I'm going to be shoved into when I walk through this door. Mm-hmm. So I don't actually trust this company.
Yeah.
So am I ready? Because once I get that image in my head, it's not going out.
Right.
And
even
so
if you just look away and move on and say it didn't do anything to you, that's a lie you were taught to tell yourself a long time ago, but it's not true. It does something to you. You see it.
And then now it's Christmas season, and you have Christmas. I mean, which is so funny because Thanksgiving hasn't even happened yet, and it's this quote unquote Christmas season, and the music. I
haven't heard that yet. I just saw all the blow up stuff, and it's just like, all right.
It's overwhelming. It's loud.
Hillbilly
so,
Baroque.
Yeah,
baby.
to stop the white
Hillbilly
noise in this season it's challenging. Because you go, I am looking forward to speaking with St. Nicholas at the resurrection.
Yeah, right.
And spending eternity with him. God be praised.
Amen.
I don't need other stories shoved in my face. Mm-hmm. You know, that like constant, and then it's in your head, and you wake up in the morning and you're like, why am I singing about this weird thing?
Removing yourself from watching stories
makes you more sensitive.
Attuned you to the recognition of how many stories you're being told all the time. And you started listening to the stories as if they weren't all one story, Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is America the Beautiful, one story. You're like, oh, these aren't all one story. Everyone, like, because they say masks and they don't say masks. So we're not all, it's different. We're all different. They're all telling their own story. And as you listen to it, you realize some of them, you don't want to be in that story at all.
Yes.
You don't like the story. You don't like where it's going. You don't like who they're worshiping. Oh my goodness, is that a cow? You know, it's just like.
Well, the other day we were listening to a Christmas album. And for the most part, it's a good album. We like it. The kids and I. And all of a sudden this song came on that I have sung at Winters since I was a tiny person. I probably listened to like John Denver sing it, or I don't know what the other guy's name was. But anyway, so the words are going along, and then all of a sudden, and I know these words.
Yeah.
They're talking about like, we're going to sit around together with our family and pretend we like each other for a little while, and we're excited that it's going to be over. Wow. So that, you know, we cannot have to put up with each other for 12 or 11 more months. Like, and I wish I knew the song and I could quote the words, but I was like,
pass the eggnog.
What?
Yeah, right.
Oh my goodness, did you guys realize what this is actually saying?
Yes.
And
probably
they were like, oh, yeah. No, well,
the kids,
no,
right,
the kids didn't. No. They didn't realize. And I quoted it again, and they were like, wow, that's pretty harsh. But it's like a Christmas song, like I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas, that we've sung forever.
I don't know this one though.
I don't, no.
At all.
I'm pretty positive you will. And I'm really bummed, like I said, that I can't remember what it was, but I was floored by it. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll have to look it up and we can talk about it at some point. But
it makes me want to look up the lyrics to Silver Bells now.
Being more,
I like Silver Bells.
I wonder if it was that one.
I don't think so.
Being more aware of the story because I am not given so many stories, I guess.
Yes.
I'm not gorged on stories. So every story that comes in, I actually can taste the flavors and smell the different spices and herbs that were used in it. Yeah. So
all of this is set up for our question. And we're going to get to now, if I can get my grab bag up. Come here, you. It's a little bit longer, so I'm going to try to read through it all, and then we'll just talk about it all. He says, it's not the way to ask me a question. You're probably the wrong person to ask.
Oh,
but it's
I love
because
it. Oh, this is one of those things where you're like, you're probably going to get mad, but, and it's like, don't tell me, because now I'm mad. You told me something that I didn't decide myself, and B, you set it up for me. Like, this is going to make you really happy. If you just start every story with that, then I guarantee every story is going to have a little bit better outcome by the listener that you've talked to.
I want to see
this is going to make you really happy. I just totaled the car.
Oh goodness!
And
well, but there's good news. What's the good news? That's Carnegie right there.
We get a new one.
Dale Carnegie, yeah. Well, it's true. It does tend to work that way, if you can afford the new one.
Christ have mercy.
Amen. You're probably the wrong person to ask since your personality seems to be the polar opposite of mine, but all the same, I would like to know your thoughts on introverted men. So I will interrupt to say, funny how people think I'm an extrovert. I reject the terminology, and I'll talk about that. But before I rejected the terminology, there's no question on any test. I am probably more introverted than you by like 10 or 30 or a billion, because I'm like the king of introverts. And you're like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. So shh. Don't be mean to me. I'm an introvert. I understand what it's like. Let's talk about this. So, because I'm not.
Just for a minute. What do people mean when they say introvert?
Let's come back to that after his question, because I want to demolish the entire concept. I think introvert's a terrible word. Extrovert's a terrible word. Psychobabble is not going to help you be a more full human.
Okay.
I often get the impression from you and other conservative Christians that men who exhibit alpha traits such as bold, outgoing personalities, and stereotypically manly interests are inherently better men. To be sure, the church needs men like that, but as a single man in his mid-20s who is not like that, I have sometimes found myself confused as to what purpose guys like me have in God's kingdom. Does the fact that I am quiet, laid back, and not a big go-getter personality mean that I don't have a potential to be a good father or husband? I am confident in my conviction that what makes a good man, biblically speaking, at least as far as the law is concerned, is performing these vocations, which only a man is able to do by virtue of his biology, namely those of husband and father, and pastor, if so called. I'm going to suggest you're a little Gnostic right there. That's your little Gnosticism right there. It's going to be the whole reason why I want to push you out of that. Right? Everything I say is like virtue of your biology, as if that's not a thing, right? As if it's just sort of like a thing on the side, as if that's not all of you, right? That's what the conversation's about. So I think that the stereotypes are too often treated in the church as prescriptive instead of merely being descriptive, averages with exceptions. So nature, you're really then making the argument, if the stereotype is according to nature, that nature is too prescriptive in the church. And I'd say you're way off on that, but you're not really saying that. What you're saying is that the branding of masculinity in the church doesn't look like biblical masculinity to you. It looks like Hebrew Americanism to you. And sure, probably. I do think men like me are often overlooked in these discussions, and perhaps for good reason. If we deserve to be at the bottom of the social hierarchy barrel, I'm curious what you think. Am I onto something, or just over-analyzing a quiet American? So the bottom of the social hierarchy barrel is worth thinking about. There's this book called Watership Down that's all about how the body of Christ has many parts. Almost not. But like the most important character on some level in Watership Down is someone who has no value to anyone ever, except for who he is to everyone, actually, all the time, if they'd listen. All of that is to say that to know who is valuable in your unit and who is not valuable is not for you to even discern, in fact, because if they're in your unit, that is, God gave them to you, then they're yours, and you are you. And there is value there to be found and used. And if the value is only this guy can't do anything, so we all have to keep him alive as best we can, well, then that value of self-sacrifice is what he brings to the team. And the leader will see and believe that, will know that, right? Sorry, I gotta go back to his question a little bit to reframe.
So we're at bottom of the social hierarchy barrel.
So I wanna say that there is no bottom of the social hierarchy in the kingdom, because the first is last, the last is first.
Yeah, that's true.
That doesn't mean that as we are in a pack together, there isn't a shepherd and sheep, or there isn't a alpha and not alphas among whatever's going on in the pack. We're not denying nature, but we're understanding that in the kingdom, we don't see one as better than the other. There's not more or less value to power. Strong power, weak power, actually just different kinds of power usually. And we only like a certain kind, violent power, it would seem. So, and that goes for all of us, by the way, even the women who don't like violence, you'll use it. So, bottom of the social barrel, the social standing of a group of humans in almost any given time will be determined by what they believe the nature of their group's survival relies upon. So if group survival relies upon catching deer in the woods, then hey bras are just going to run everything. Okay? Unless they realize that Bob knows how to tell them where to catch deer, even though he can't catch them. And so they all listen to Bob because Bob's smart. And hey bra can figure out that smart's better than hey bra. Okay? But that said, right, hey bra is a survival necessity, right? But then that doesn't mean that intellect or care or discernment or repair or all manner of maintenance, all manner of other things that men do, women do too, but people do, are not necessary. So social hierarchy is more about who do we trust and why and for how long, because no social hierarchy is going to last forever. Guy's going to die, whoever's leading you, So it's who do we trust and why and for how long. And how do we pass social trust? Well, what do you know? We live in a history of a world where that doesn't happen very well. Because nobody trusts each other because we're all a bunch of selfish people, things like that. So in the social pack, there will be a top and there will be a bottom. They're equally valuable to the pack, and they will scale and shift and change with time, so that the newborn baby will be at the bottom of the pack. And that's not bad for the baby. It's good for the baby. Okay.
Protecting
so yeah, it's really good for the baby. So, here, everything else we're going to talk about in that understanding then. And so in any group pack, you're going to need a man who stands up to lead. And in most places, if he does not demonstrate enough understanding of the hey bras to at least have them know he knows what they know, and he doesn't have to like it, but he's not going to be just in a corner being weird by himself all the time. Well, then they'll follow him. But if you're dismissive to the hey bras, then they won't follow you. Right. And that's the trick is, I don't mean hey bra is purely the extroversion concept, but this stereotypical man who walks in strong and just makes noise. Right. Not all guys are really like that. Most guys aren't like that at all. Most guys who are super loud are performing. They're posing. They're attempting to appear what they'd like to be. Young men do this, and it's not bad. Don't be mad at your young man because he stands up and tries to look like something he wants to be in the future. He buys a coat and you think that makes him. It doesn't make him, but he's aiming for something, and that's good. You want your young men to aspire. I'm just going to dovetail, though, into something from Sons of Solomon. It's the fourth commandment, but it's a concept in the fourth commandment called the patriarchy principle, for lack of a better term. And, this is me attempting to give us some, this cuts through cultures. In any conversation with two, there will be probably a dominant talker. Probably. And then a receptive talker. those rules can change, but generally they're going to be stable. You enter a third person into that conversation. And now, interestingly, with 3, the dominant talker now becomes less dominant, even though he would still be dominant. But the other 2, by virtue of talking each, when they do, will have the power to minimize his dominance. Okay? The patriarchy principle is the awareness that will happen in any gathering of 3 people, no matter what you do. You make any rules you want, it's going to happen that one of them will talk more than the other 2, but the other 2 will be able to counter the one when they are together. Friendships work like this, generally, really well. That's how we're built. Marriage works like this. That's why if you have 4 kids, they can start to gang up on you, right? So the patriarchy principle, though, then sees that no matter what, there will always be one who will talk more than the others in the group, starting with 3, 2, and up from there. And then acknowledging that this is good because God made it this way. And so in any group of men, there will be a man who, when he talks, has more influence than everybody else in that group. He may be in front, he may not. I suggest you get that guy in front. That's how you judge him. If you let the guy be in the back and he only says words to people on the side, you got the Godfather running the show. Okay. If you want that guy up front, so you can throw stones at him when he does evil things, or at least you know what he's saying, right? He does have to justify. He does have to clarify. But in any case, you are going to have a voice that talks more than the other voices in any group. That group is the patriarch. If it's a woman and there are men under her, that's fascinating. It's not according to nature, and there can be all sorts of dynamics that might lead to such a thing. I would call that unstable, probably, in the long term. But men can be unstable too, so it's not like having a male patriarch guarantees stability. Although having a male patriarch who understands the patriarch principle and applies it, knowing that he, therefore, in his home, doesn't get to choose if he's the patriarch. He will be because he is a man. He must be. It's what he is. Like that mindset is what a Christian man will have for his own. And that's where to like bring up football is like, it's not about a ball. It's about what you have in your hands. And do you own it with a certain dignity that you honestly do believe your way is the better way? Right. So Bob, who like runs and plays football all the time, he's a good man and Jesus loves him too, but you're really glad you're not him because your way is actually better. So what I'm looking for you a little bit here is for you to say, my question really is, isn't introversion better? As most introverts would probably like to hear it said. And in fact, there's a good book called Quiet that you can read about. And if you'd like to go read Quiet, I didn't read it. I heard the interview on it. Meridith found it pretty impactful for understanding me, I think. And our
children.
Yeah. But then that gets us to where Quiet's a book about introversion. You asked for the definition, and then I want to dismiss it at the same time, and then talk about what really is here that we don't have to call introversion. But when you call it that, it comes with baggage from a school, and I don't want the baggage. But introversion, extroversion is, let me see if I can pull the Dr. Kuhn's footnote out. He said at one point, is it Marx? No, it's not Marx. Who is it? It's not Freud. Somewhere between Marx, Freud, and the German guys, the entire introversion spectrum, extroversion spectrum concept comes out of a view of man that is highly atheistic, highly atheistic. And in that way, I would say what you see most in them is the need for dichotomy. So the whole concept of extrovert, introvert is that, yeah, you're on a spectrum between two things, but you can only be one or the other. And even if you're in the middle, you're only kind of in the middle of the two. There's no third way. Not to be a communist about that phrase for the listener. Go back 2 sentences for me, or were you just writing down?
So it's an atheistic thought because you have to be one or the other, and you're sliding along this spectrum.
So, and then all the other parameters in the test that gives you whether you're an introvert or extrovert, Myers-Briggs, I believe, they're all one-to-one spectrums too. So you have this like wide grid of dichotomies that then you look at as a plane, and you attempt to read yourself as a plane of dichotomies in categories that are formed by reason, by plausible idea, but not necessarily actually naturally what describes who you are. And that's my experience again, right? So it's plausible. If you want to describe me as an introvert, you'll explain a lot of things about me. I just don't accept the moniker because I think what it says about me is just not true at the end of the day, which is that I am turned in or out, when I'm neither turned in nor out at all. I'm a human who has the capacity to look in and to look out. I can see others. I cannot. I can have others fill me with energy. I can have them deplete my energy. It depends on who they are. It depends on who I am, and I can change. I can grow. I can be different. When you say I'm an introvert, you say I can't be different. And I'm not saying that my desire to be different has made it so if I took the test, I'd suddenly be an extrovert. I reject the category. I reject the category. I am neither. If I am going to need to talk to someone today, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to do it with all my heart. And then if I have some time to be alone, well, I'll probably take it because I like to recover, right? So, the book Quiet would suggest that there are people out there who like to take time to recover, process thoughts and forward thoughts. And then it calls that introversion. I don't know why that has to be introversion. Can't that just be thinking? Planning? Why does it have to be some psychological category that makes me afraid of people? Right? So you bring a story with it, with the word, and I don't want the story. Right? Is there a place for quiet men? Yeah, I would suggest the Bible teaches that most men should be known for being quiet until they speak wisdom. That's the biblical model, quiet. Right? So like the pompous boasting standing, that what you have is a lot of young men trying to figure out how to be men with very few models worth following. And so you see them standing up and saying, well, I think I should do this. And you know what? It's important. We want the young men to aspire. We want their zeal to go. So I'm asking you again, so what are you proud of then? Stop judging yourself based upon what they're doing. You don't think what they're doing is worth doing for a good reason, I would hope. I hope it's not just fear and you're not pining for their lives, but you in fact give your time to things you find important. Well, good, right? That's very human. But as a man, it's very masculine to take ownership of those things and to believe that they're more important than the things the other guys are doing. You see a bigger picture. You see more value. They're not bad. God gave them their life. We all are members of the same body, are we not? And so again, just because you're not the one who's going to really love getting up and talking in front of people, I don't love it either, by the way. I kind of hate it. I'm good at it, but I kind of hate it. Just because you don't love doing it, okay, doesn't mean that your capacities can't be understood by the pack and then become part of the pack. When a wolf pack goes hunting, I don't think they like look at the weakest wolf and not let him come. He becomes part of the hunt. He does what he can do, unless he's so sickly they chase him off, right? In which case he's actually sickly. Now you can be chased off by a bunch of hey-bra guys and feel pushed out of their group because they're all talking about eating bacon, right? And you just don't feel like it because you don't eat pork or whatever reason you can come up with. None of that's what makes a man a man. None of that's what makes a man a man. I already said it. I just want to catch the thought the way I had it before. I don't think I'm going to though. What makes a man is he knows he's right. And he could be wrong, in fact, and then learn from it and grow. And it doesn't bother him so much because he doesn't have to be right like all the time perfectly. It's just he's willing to make it. This is what we talked about earlier with the question. He's willing to look at his notes and say, well, that, and then go. And he'll kind of figure it out as he goes. And ladies on the spectrum are generally not as much like that as men. Now, with men and women, you have men who are more that way and men who are less that way. But the men who are less that way are generally going to be a lot more that way than the women who are less that way, right? So you have women who might be more masculine, right? But they're not going to be attracted to, or they're not going to necessarily have a problem with a man who's more feminine. Actually, that might be the way it goes. So like we have these things we like because I'm a man, and we have these things we like because you're a woman. those things can flip-flop. They can be for, like, women can like what I like, and men can like what you like. Like, that's all possible. But we can't operate in a home where I don't believe my way is dignified and I know what I'm doing and I think we all should do it. You can't operate in a home where the man doesn't believe that about his own way. He has to believe that about his own way. Mm-hmm. And the woman has to believe that her way is good but capable of changing to follow the man. Mm-hmm. Right? And the man, if he believes his way is good but he could change it for her, that's matrilinealism at its like seeding. Okay, it doesn't mean that you can't learn wisdom for your wife, or you should always do whatever you think no matter what. I mean, and I know some young men, they can grab one sentence and they can run with it. Right? That's about all they can do. But there's something potent here. The man has to believe his way is dignified and worth doing, and be capable of repenting if he finds it is wrong. And that isn't a loss of dignity. As soon as he finds out he did wrong, there's no loss in dignity until he says, I didn't do wrong or I won't change. Now he loses dignity, right? The mistake, the error, even the sin is not the loss of dignity. It's the unrepentance that really tears us apart. So, I hope you're hearing then, no, you don't have to like football, right? You don't have to try to posture. You don't have to try to look like a man and be beefy and all this stuff. But I do think that if by introvert you mean I avoid conflict, I don't look people in the eye, I am unwilling to work on conversational mechanics so that I am hospitable, so other people feel welcome when I'm there. If you are going to instead live in a computer or on a screen because you're an introvert, and so that's okay then, all of those things, I just reject that out of hand. Non-Christian variables, really. Hospitality is not an option for us. So if you're such an introvert that when people walk into your church, you run away, next week, tell yourself, Jesus, I'm going to pray to you before I run away. And then the next week, I know it's going to be different after that, right? Because hospitality is not an option. Kindness is not an option. Gentleness is not an option. Patience is not an option. Love is not an option, right? Fruit of the Spirit are not options. They are what we're to pursue. And they're ways. They're not, patience is not something I have. Patience is something I do right now. Right? Kindness is something I do right now. They're not bottles of goo that we keep. Right? There is a habit and discipline that can learn to enact or forefront or forward patience and kindness, that it becomes a habit. But first, it's a thing. It's a thing you do. And so I do think, therefore, that most men who would allow themselves to be labeled under the label introvert diminish their capacity to actually reign over their own stuff. And I don't mean you need a monster truck, but I think you should like your car because it's power and it gets you places. And even if you like your car because you got the cheapest, most economic, oldest one ever, and it only needs an oil change once a year, and you don't like getting your hands dirty, and great, but that was the best decision, wasn't it then? Right? So it isn't, does it have to be shiny? I like big tires, right? That's me. I want to like my car because in this age, if I had a horse, I'd want to like my horse, right? Pursue that. Man's going to pursue that. And that's what makes a man, I'm going to use Adam's language again, make men go over mountains while women stay home. Men come back, take the women over the mountains. Right? Women go over mountains after men go over the mountains. You read history, you can read the history of women. They always do it after. They can say it's the men kept them down, but okay. Or you can learn the wisdom of it. Men go over mountains, women stay home. It's just our inclination. It's our first step. You can go over the mountain. Some woman heard that. She's like, oh, I can go over mountains. Okay, fine. That's not the point. You're missing the wisdom. The wisdom is your first step is to conserve as a woman. And a man's first step is actually to risk a little bit. And that's why we make such a good pair, The man is able to make risks while the woman is conserving what's behind so that they stay together. But he forwards things. He catches the deer, right? And so, yes, we live in a society where you don't have to catch deer, so don't worry about catching deer. You might ponder how you will operate in a society that is less civil than the one now, where you can't expect your neighbor to respect you just because you're a human, nor can you expect someone on the street not to assault you in any way just because you're a human, right? And so what do you, as someone who is more timid, plan to do in order to be a self-protecting member of society, a self-sufficient member of society, which again, I think that always means pack up, like herd with somebody. You don't operate alone. Nobody survives alone. Humans aren't solo operators. That's not how we do it. We live in big packs, tribes, right? So, you belong in a tribe. And the problem with introversion as a belief system is it tends to isolate you from tribes in your local space. You're only going to be with tribes in virtual space. And that can feed the brain a whole lot, but it doesn't really feed your capacity to handle nature. So by handle nature, I don't mean, you have to go Bear Grylls, eat raw salmon on the shores of Greenland. I mean, like, go outside today, open a window, clean something, right? Outside, right? And, or build something, right? And anything, is it Legos? Fine. But get more real than that if you can. And you'll find your manhood there. And you won't have to define yourself as introverted. You can just be you. You can be you, and you can desire quiet time because quiet time's good. And then you can decide, you know what? I've had some quiet time. I think I'll go experience a crowd. Why not? I don't like crowds, but you know what? It's kind of stupid not to be able to operate in a crowd, because in lots of scenarios, it's a church. It's good to be able to operate in a crowd, right? Without having like all descend on you. And anyone's going to look at me and say, well, you do it all. I battle all the fears that anybody with social anxiety of crowds battles, and with speaking in public battles. So don't tell me I don't count. I do it all through it, everybody. Okay. You can do it too. It can be done. And it's not all faking. There's elements where you have to hold your tongue, and that's just wisdom too, but it really is true. So hospitality, put that in your frame. I'm an introvert. Okay. But you're a hospitable one, right? Or how about be a hospitable soul? I'm not going to let you split my soul in half on some spectrum of dichotomy where I get to either like people or not. and if I want to be alone, I have to not like people according to your science, and all this. So, to me, that's more important than the caricature. But I want the caricature to stand, though, like you want the men who lead to look like they're leading. It doesn't mean they have to beat their chest and scream a lot. Okay. That is how apes do it. I think, man generally is wise enough in our self-interest that, the guy who's, the group who wants to survive can, through conversation, understand who understands. And, then from that point, use their dynamic as a group to make sure that those who don't understand don't make the decisions. And that's what a father and mother do with the kids, right? I mean, I'm just talking about family, right? What do you think I was talking about? Zombie apocalypse? They don't understand what we do, so we make the decisions so that we can build understanding. And the man has to want his own. He has to want his own. That's hard right now. It's hard. I couldn't have said that a year ago. I didn't know that. I know it now. And it doesn't mean like you have to have more. Like it really is like Psalm 16. I mean, if you're asking where I'm getting this from, Psalm 16. Go read it a lot, over and over again for like 2-3 months, right? Until you really don't know what it means, or really do. You pick one, but do it, 90 times through. And the lot has fallen in pleasant places. It's good to want what's yours with a zealous passion. It's wanting what's not yours that all the trouble comes from. Dreams. You took down a lot of notes. I know you got plenty you could say too on this, because it's not just about man. It is about man and woman. And I think there's more edges I didn't even touch on. So,
yeah, one of the first notes that I jotted down was when he described himself as quiet, laid back, and not a go-getter. My question is, and I mean it in Christian love, like truly, but how much meat is being consumed? Not white
by
chicken
men?
meat. By this person who's
testosterone,
in this position,
sure.
because I go out and I gather our food for the family, and I cannot tell you how many times I'm pushing my cart through the store and men will look into my cart and be like, wow, I want to go home with you. Well, that's an uncomfortable situation. But
you say, so does my husband.
Women don't do that. They don't look at my cart and hunger for all the red meat that's in it.
Isn't that weird?
There is something in there for you guys. There is something in there for us as well, for women. But it's like you're starving for it and you know it. Man, I really, that burger, that looks good. Can't wait to grill this weekend. Well, why don't you grill every night? So that was one of my thoughts.
So let's just revamp that a little bit and emphasize that. So forward motion and testosterone are really tightly connected to each other. Women, you have testosterone. Did you know that? They told you in high school, women have estrogen, men have testosterone. And then they continued to talk, and they also told you we all have all of it, but no one remembers that. That wasn't on the test. We all have all of it, right? And we just have different portions of it. And there's also the progesterone that's working in there as well. But testosterone is what leads to forward motion, among other things. It is the amper. Okay. So if you as a man are lacking forward motion, there's a good chance that there's a testosterone deficiency in some way that probably is tied. I mean, I actually know guys who've taken testosterone shots and they say it works great.
We're not promoting
Go to your
that
own doctor. Go to your own doctor. Okay. But what I think is more important is to realize that so a low testosterone as a hormone in the lymphatic system is going to be a complex scenario. It's not going to be a one-to-one cause of why you have low testosterone. And there's a lot of things diminishing male testosterone in Western Americanized culture. What we drink, water. Our water is horrible for testosterone. Bunch of other reasons. But as you then know, like a single net, fastest thing you can do to put more testosterone into your diet, men and women both need it, is red meat. Red meat.
And it wasn't in his description of himself, the quiet part. That's fine. Like, I get that.
Quiet's good.
People are loud, boisterous. People are quiet, contemplative. I find myself to be more of a quiet, contemplative person sometimes. But then sometimes I'm more loud and boisterous. So I get it. And then he described himself as laid back. And it's like, yeah, well, that's great. God be praised for you. You are a wonderful group addition. Like, come on and be in my group.
I have very rarely met a laid back introvert. I've met lots of introverts who say they're laid back. Introvert and anxiety go hand in hand, everybody. Really do. Again, as you start to break down the stories they tell you, all the people going in for counseling and care and drugs, they're not the extroverts, right? So
there you have it. But the go-getter, I'm not a go-getter, was what made me go, I think you might be malnourished.
Yeah.
If you're eating just what's being sold on the grocery shelves.
Yeah.
That's called the standard American diet. Yeah. And part of where we have come from with developing what's on our grocery shelves was influenced heavily by this idea that was in the Seventh-day Adventist mindset. It's vegan essentially, but we're getting a lot of seed fats and a lot of legume proteins, and this concept of let's get away from the meat so that we can have more docile men. And so, not being a go-getter, it was like ding 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 ding. Okay, he needs potentially more
get away
meat.
From the meat to have more docile men is literally the prophecy from Helen White. Okay, so demon or otherwise, you decide, right? Getting some red meat, looking at those types of behaviors and things, supplement or otherwise, that would enable you to recover testosterone. That does mean activity, walking, all that kind of stuff. It's a complex thing. Your body is such a not machine. It's such not a machine that there's almost no one-to-ones.
Just aiming for a pound of ground beef a day. Just
Right.
even on
Eating
top of whatever you're eating, whatever
motion's
else
the same
you're eating.
thing. So that's where like you don't have to like athletics to do a couple of body weight deadlifts in the morning. This is just, or squats. I mean, you get out of bed and like squat and stand like 10 times. Okay. That moves your lymphatic system. It increases your testosterone as a man. It gets the cortisone flowing for the day. It strengthens the entire body frame, the core frame, and you keep mobility going. Like you can say, well, I don't have to be a man and do that. It's like, okay, but you're going to hurt a lot. You're going to be weak. You're going to be useless to your community. And it's not about being strong so you can be cool. It's about like, does your wife need you to pick up that box? Oh, I'm sorry, honey. Let me call a guy. Okay. I mean, and I actually got to do that. I got a bad back, so I don't pick up heavy boxes. But like, don't you want to be able to provide? So don't take pride in being weak. Just because the guys who take pride in being strong do it wrong. And I'll give you that. They do it wrong. Small man can do it, though. Small man can do it. He can see more. And by small, I just mean by comparison, right? Small in stature, small in frame, small in noise. You do need to speak. So if you're going to be in a group of men and not talk at all, they're going to find you uncomfortable. They're going to think you are uncomfortable. You are uncomfortable and you're making them uncomfortable. So say something. Hi. Hi, I'm uncomfortable. I don't have a lot of brothers. I don't know how to talk to guys. That helps. Most guys that have brothers are like, oh, that's why. And then they just move on. You're like one of them now. You're inside, right? But if you just come and you can't ever speak in to the men, right? Speak into the group. They're just going to wonder why you're an outsider. Why is that guy an outsider? We'd like him to be an insider. He's like, they're going to hate me if I talk. And they're like, why is he not talking? So, you gotta get to the point where you speak. And at churches, this can be very challenging. I get it. I know, especially if you come and go, you don't know who to talk to. At that point, I say target one person who looks friendly or has talked to you in the past and talk to them every week and just keep talking. Hi, how you doing? Tell me about your week. Listen. Great. See you next week. And then maybe the next week you'll be like, okay, they said all this stuff. Maybe this time I can talk about what they said, but like, you don't have to win. You have to play the game. Got to pursue. And man's going to pursue unless he's got, the spine pulled out, battery yanked out of his head or whatever you want to look at it as. So my guess is you're somewhere in the middle of all this. You feel stirred. You feel like you should do something more than you're doing, but you don't have a good model because the models that you see are hey bra again. And don't knock off all the hey bras. There's some power underneath these guys and a lot of wisdom to them if you can kind of, let their style be not as important. And you can learn from anybody. If a guy has other people following him, you can learn from him. Doesn't mean you have to follow him. In fact, Jesus would tell you follow one. Yeah. So.
And then the other thing that stuck out was you, Jonathan, were talking about how we need a strong leader in our groups, in our communities. And then I was thinking about what our questioner had talked about with regards to himself, and not everybody can be the leader of the group, but it's really important that every leader have supporters.
Amen.
Because if he's not supported, then he's leading nobody. And so it's just as important to be the Aaron holding Moses' arms up as it is to be Moses, right? And so, there is a way to use the gift of a quiet, laid back spirit that God has given you to further the more bold and possibly leadership qualities in others, This
is what I like about the patriarch principle again, is that, so in a large group, I mean, when you first walk in, it's probably prudent to assume you're not the leader, unless someone's told you are, unless you are. You assume you're not the leader. But if the group has no leader, well, now there's a moment where you have to decide whether you think there should be a leader. And as soon as you say there should be a leader, guess what? You are one. You just became one. So the the patriarch principle lets you in any moment decide, I don't have to lead, or I'm going to lead. And it comes down to, okay, now there's just two of you, right? We went from a big group. Who's the leader? We don't know. Let's just start with, okay, there's two of you. You're not talking. I'm not talking about you really, Billy. You're not talking. I'm not talking. One of us has to talk, or one of us is going to talk and walk away. Yeah. So be the leader and ask the other person about themselves. Which is, you would think that they would just talk about themselves, but they're going to follow you if you'll just ask them about themselves. Really? Yep. And so at 2, there you go. Anyone who's not talking, just ask them about themselves, and now they're talking to you. And if you show interest, they will follow you for some extent. I mean, they'll continue to let you lead the conversation at least, right? They like talking about themselves. Dale Carnegie, Win Friends, Influence People is not a bad little resource. The reference to Carnegie threw me in a different direction.
Encourage people to talk about themselves.
Patriarch principle. At any given moment, then, it's either your task to talk because there's no one else talking. And so it must be you. Since you're wondering why no one else is talking, you probably should say something in this smaller group. And then own the fact that the others are probably more afraid than you are of talking. And so, and for all introverts, someone's got to talk, So just do it, right? And then, again, the patriarch principle lets you just know there's never a time where, as a human, you're not supposed to ask that question, who's leading? And what's my relationship to that leader in this space right now? This group of 3, group of 10, you move from the narthex to the back room, right? What's going on? You can look at it and you can find your place. Being a man and a woman tells you a lot about where you belong. And then your relationship to people who you know tells you a lot about who you belong. Anybody who comes as an outsider, they can usually tell what's going on too. They can see some of it. They know who's active, who's in power, who's not. There's signs for that we wear. There's signs we don't wear. So patriarch principle, again, it's a principle because it's so universally powerful. If you're in space with another person and there is no conversation and you speak, you are leading. And that's a good thing. It is a worthy pursuit and is highly masculine, but women can do it too and will do it to themselves and to those under them. So it's refractive in that way.
Yeah. Let's see. And then you were saying that we want men who are leading to look like they're leading. Mm-hmm. And that made me kind of think about some of this stuff that, let's see, some of the issues that when we went to Alaska on our adventure, neither of us were really prepared to encounter, per se. Like, we didn't think, oh, we're going to Alaska, we're going to encounter headship and submission. Yeah, and how ill-equipped our society and Christian culture has even made us. Right. Right. To face the adventure that we have, that God has ordained for us to have. So we're on our adventure, and very quickly, just your battle with being the leader of the home and owning it, mm-hmm. and my battle with, okay, what does it look like to submit to a man who doesn't quite know what leadership looks like in the home. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a super good leader in other scenarios, but for some reason in the home, there was enough. Crap. Yeah, I can tell. You're good. There was enough other experiences that you were tentative of how, quote unquote, how it's supposed to be in the house. And so to a point where it was like, just an example, the kitchen was referred to as my Meridith's kitchen, which baffled me because it was like, why suddenly is this space my space? It's not, I don't own it. This is just a place I work a lot, but it's not my space any more than the bathroom or the living room, the dining room, whatever is. So, so that comment of, we want men who are leaders to look like they're leaders it harkened me back to my realization that in order for my fear to subside, when I think of scary scenarios, if I am afraid as a woman, I become more I come off more controlling. And I think we can see this in women who take on political positions. They become more harsh than their male counterpart. And the realization I had was that it's an insecurity, and it's actually a cry for leadership. So like, I don't want to be the leader. Please, somebody take on that leadership role. Take that leadership from me. And throughout the show today, you've mentioned some different things where like women don't want to make the decision.
Did call it a trope.
And I think that is so if this is our tendency, that we have struggle with making the decision, then to apply we want leaders who look like leaders to that scenario. Okay, we're going to go to supper. Where are we going to go? Well, the husband says to the wife, I chose last time, so how about you choose this time? And she doesn't know what to say. So how can he help her in that scenario? She's looking to him for leadership, but now she feels insecure because the leadership has been taken. So he can say, I feel like this or this. Which would you like? I feel like Chinese or Mexican. Which one sounds better to you? And then she can make an easier decision rather than the whole world's your oyster. Which restaurant, which cuisine do you want to go to? So I guess what I'm poking at is helping each other in our weaknesses. So I, as a woman, have weaknesses in fulfilling my role as a submissive wife. And when you note that, then you as the head, as the leader, can help me along in ways so that I can succeed in those weak areas, making a decision, for example. When I, as a wife, notice you have weaknesses of insecurity or need for building up, like kind of imposter syndrome, I can note that and be sure to be ready to compliment or rave about you at a dinner party or, whatever it is, to build you up and make sure that you can succeed in that space. So that was out of, we want leaders who look like leaders. It just kind of made me think about husband and wife dynamic and how you don't ever really stop being the head of the home, even if it seems like a trivial scenario. Like,
well, failure to lead is its own form of leadership, and it will fail, but it is failing leadership.
Yeah.
You said a lot of stuff that the bit about the battle for ownership and the battle for submission. I think that's pretty good categories for most of our hearers or viewers or listeners to kind of put it into their own world unless they're completely opposed to our worldview. But that, Christian men right now, if you want to figure out, what's going on? What am I trying to, you're battling for ownership of your own. You're trying to understand what ownership means. And I'd say the paper dollar has a lot to do with why you don't know that you own anything, because you don't in some ways in this country, right? It all could go away. And that's why we're all afraid and watching the news. And so the battle for ownership today, right? The battle for my own, to know what it means to be me and all that. That's very much the man. And then the woman's battle for surrender is also about what it means to be you. But then recognizing that in the world of men, that a woman does not stand on her own. Rare indeed, widow, we call her, right? So discovering that your own is the opposite of man, where the man needs to have it independent. He needs to have his own. Yours needs to be under someone's. Mm-hmm. And the variations on man and woman that all the stories that the TV has told us, all of them fit the same dynamic that's not that. So whatever other stories you've been watching, they're not teaching you about this intuitive and very natural animal nature of man and woman. It has nothing to do with what I think. It has to do with how we operate as a pack. And you know this too. And so that if a man is not owning his own, get a male dog and watch that dog take over the house. Watch it. Because she won't stop him. and you would, right? And that's so many men just put up with that. And then they have their own relationship with the dog.
Here's another illustration that I just realized. I get so frustrated with our sweet rabbit because we potty trained him so that he's litter box trained. And every time I let him out to exercise, he goes here, he goes here, he goes here. It's like squeezes it out. He has no need to urinate. But it does. Comes out. And I realized, a need
called instinct.
He goes around the perimeter of his space.
Marks
and he's like,
space.
This is it.
Yep.
Note, this is my space.
Yep.
And
if you capture it in a little tiny bottle and put it in those corners in a little tiny bottle.
Capture it.
So you can have the scent
Suck
of
it
the
up
bottle.
with a syringe.
Yeah. Like a little cork so that you could smell it. And then
it probably would work.
I bet it would.
Yeah. But I was so frustrated yesterday because I was like, man, sweet rabbit, it's been how many years and I still can't just let you run in this room?
See, you're talking to him like he's a...
And he's like, no, you can't because this is my room, first off, and I have to figure that out. And then you keep cleaning it up. What do you expect? So, he's taking ownership of his space. Mm-hmm. And he charges after every male that comes into his space. Now, he's kind of a crotchety old rabbit.
He hasn't charged me yet.
Oh, no? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, God be praised.
I'm waiting. He might die that day. So
I think he knows that.
Yeah, that's also what I think. And so I'm going to keep on that.
Yeah.
We look at each other sometimes now. It's kind of like, hi, sweet rabbit. Are you thinking I'm Fidesz? Because I'm not. And then I go pet him and he's like, yeah, you're not Fidesz. Yeah.
But young boys, especially like pre-puberty boys that come into his space or come to his cage, he is so not pleased with them.
No,
which
so
is
ownership
so
of space.
different.
Ownership of space. So men, you're not going to go and do things in the corners of your home.
Not even if they're in little vials. We don't need that.
No, but to want to own your own, and what we've been trained to do is to want to help the woman own it. It's just weird. That's why we're always asking, what do you think? What do you think? We've been trained to believe that it's your happiness that our ownership is for. That's not true. It's your good that our ownership is for. There's a big difference between those two things. So we're kind of out of time here. It's been a good conversation. It's a lot of digging. Grizz from Grizz's Garage, Grizz has been around a long time. He talks about Grandma's kitchen. Grandma ruled Grandma's kitchen. She fed us and nurtured us, but also maintained order in her kitchen. So I think there's probably, in my language about it, health or unhealth aside, in the survivalist Germanic immigrant world where crack of dawn, dad's up and outside to work till it's dark, and he comes home and eats and falls asleep again. Maybe goes do some more chores, falls asleep again. in that world, you went into the kitchen and the only power in the house was mom or grandma, and yeah, she ruled it, right? But did dad think it was her kitchen? That's the thing that shifted.
And that
here.
was what was handed down to you that then you tried to forward to me, which made me so, like, we stumbled over that for so long. And I think still it's a little bit of a hang up, but I think we're getting to a better space.
It's that struggle for ownership where, so then, are you going to follow us? Get ready, because she's going to say, oh, okay, take ownership, and you're going to do it. And she's going to say, why'd you do that?
And so on the side, though, like, men understand, like, we seriously want to know why.
Yeah.
Even though we're like, you took away my idol.
Yeah.
Why did you take away my idol? But we need your leadership so that we can then calm our spirit.
I completely understand all of this.
Okay.
And I will continue to forward on my own agenda. But for the sake of the zeitgeist that you might follow, that your question is the most debilitating thing you can do to the guy who's just trying. He's just trying, you know. And it's just like, what, I did it wrong again, right? Yeah. And then he's not going to try anymore. And so again, I know that here, and that's why we had this conversation last night. Like, I'm having all these ideas about you, and I'm just like, well, I'm just gonna think about it for a while. You know.
So just, I mean, I don't know if you're like trying to shut the show down.
I am.
So
I have to go to the restroom.
Oh, okay.
I can explain it. I mean, very clearly, you and I had a wonderful conversation where your learning of our life and scripture brought you to say to me, I want to see what this place looks like if you just did whatever you wanted to it. And I've run with it in my head. I haven't run with it much else. A few spots beginning to, because I don't want to overwhelm you with the tidal weight of change. I don't really want to change. I want to enhance. So,
well, and it honestly started for me with Hebron, because I had a huge hand in doing the purchasing and the setting up of Hebron, the decorating, but I did not do, and I consciously was like, this is not my space. I am merely the hands and the feet doing the work. So every time, okay, what paint swatches? Okay, what dishes? These are what I found that I think look good, but you know, what is your vision? And so nothing went in without you being like, this is what I want there. And so that then, along with my continual study of scripture, it was like, well, I mean, if he truly, so at the base of the issue is, do I trust that you have my best interest in mind?
That is correct.
And I think a lot of times the women don't. We don't trust our men. Why? Well, maybe because they've been a little too laid back and not go-getter enough.
Yeah.
So it's this, like, we're shooting each other in the foot.
That's the interesting thing there, especially as we talk about the guy says, you know, I'm a laid back guy. And he thinks that means chill, but it means not engaging. But you don't appear chill, probably. And then we need someone who's going to go get her. Now we say get her done like it's a job, but that comes from an older, like, son, go get her, because she's not going to come get you. And
it's
so if you don't have enough
forward
motion to go get her, if you're just going to be so chill, you're going to wait. Well, then, you know, Miss Wisdom's going to swim right on by. And so, there's, you want testosterone. You want to be the man who moves forward. You don't have to compete with He-Man and, you know, I don't know, Nebuchadnezzar and the greats. Compete with yourself. You know, my agenda, I don't know who told me this. Was it Tony Robbins? I don't think it was, but it was, I have the agenda of Christianity. And then within my Christianity, the measure by which I will decide whether or not I succeeded today was it in the same faith direction life as yesterday? Because I don't want to change much, actually, other than be more comforting to others, be more hospitable to others. Like, but that's not style, right? It's not furniture. So, my hope would be to continue to grow in those things that are real and active and impact people around me, regardless of what, you know, it looks like to the world as we shift between, you know, mason jar glasses and and whatever else comes. I like the mason jar glasses. They're fragile. You know, I don't like fragile breaks, but you have to find a harmony. That's what the hillbilly Baroque.
I have my, what is this called? It's something jacket.
It's cool.
It's called a jar jacket.
It's a wonderful 80%.
My husband came to me and he's like, I'm a little worried that you carry a mason jar everywhere. Can you look into a glass bottle or something?
Off my dashboard while I was driving when you weren't in the car and spilled everywhere.
Oh.
That's when I said, can we get something so it doesn't break at the same? It didn't break, but imagine if that had broken. So the but the hillbilly Baroque though, again, there's something beautiful about pursuing beauty. And when it's one thing, you carrying a mason jar everywhere you go is risky. Okay. Mason jars on your table aren't risky, but they are universal. They allow you to have more than one thing in your home, or one thing in your home that does more than one thing. It does all these things, right? It's good for many things. If you need a mason jar, you have one. And so I pillage one every once in a while, and I know we buy more. And well, they do break. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like all of the stuff, it breaks. It gets used, and so. You can replace it and think differently the next time you have to replace something.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, I really want to have stuff in my kitchen because it's a small kitchen and I don't like over excessive dark cabinetry. I want stuff that can be used for more than one purpose.
The phrase I used instead of hillbilly when I was talking with Frisbee was Americana, which summarizes it pretty well too.
Yeah, it does.
Americana Baroque. And to see, if you can take something from the show today, the times we live and have, it's the best of times, the worst of times. You can see all the terror. You can also see all that lies before you that you can do today in your home. What are you saving for 30 years from now for? You live today. Mm-hmm. And your family's today. Jesus is alive today. So that's where we're at as we push forward and continue to try to work on our marriage, our family, our neighborhood, our congregation, our city, even our state a little bit. And thank you, all of you who support us in that. Subscribestar.com to subscribe to everything. It's just a general thank you. Thank you to those of you who do that. And now you can subscribe to my Substack as well in order to get the Almost Dailies and other sneak previews of other stuff as a subscription model if you prefer to do that. And again, in that spot, and I think it's an $8 minimum a month, but it's Substack, and then you can put more if you wish. But I'd like that. On that, the Almost Dailies, they ran all week. Lots of cool art, story working. This coming Mad Monday taste before the news is going to be a little more just on fiction writing in general. And so that if I'm not publishing new fiction every week, I want to write about writing and why a little bit. So First Draft is that column that I'll begin cataloging a bit. And I do want to, as we go out, I think Miles is gone now. Maybe he's still here, but the comment about the restart, every morning, man, every morning, why aren't you restarting? Did you not restart in 2020? And I get it. If you're trying to follow me, that's going to be hard because I do a lot of stuff and I don't slow down and I don't wait. And I'm not really worried about if you're still following me because I figure that what I did influenced you enough that God did what he needed to do with it. And you'll go do good where you are now. So I'm not all about, I got to build my fan base and keep all the people and all this. I'm a pastor, man. I'm a pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Rockford, Illinois. You can come join my church and you'll get to know how human I am. Yeah. And in the meantime, I'm just trying to shout into every medium that I can as much of what the Word of God has told me that I can, even while I'm doing it. And I'm not asking for anything back from you. So I appreciate if in the future, as you consider my restarts, you maybe just think, oh, Fisk, he likes to do new stuff because it's fun. Yeah. So hallelujah to that. And glad to be here with you on the journey. Not everyone has to do new stuff, but you're listening because it helps sometimes to have someone do it and then tell you why not to.
There you go.
Yeah. So thank you, Meridith, for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of this as a concept and going for it.
Yeah.
Going and getting her.
Yeah. No, there's something to it because I have other spaces where I talk and I like talking here too. And I obviously do. But what we're working on privately really, is just It's just what a lot of Christian marriages need. And so any way we can share that, young and old, I don't want to air everything, and you don't either, and you don't want us to.
Well, it was interesting talking to another young woman, another young Christian who desires deeply to submit to her husband and follow him wherever he goes and however he leads. My concept, I've heard a lot from young men who claim that they can empathize with you. Mm-hmm. Whatever it was about the television in the home in the 80s, 90s, and then going off to college and the music, whatever it was, the computer and its influence, created these men who now struggle with very similar psychological struggles. I don't know how else to say it. And so I was kind of under the impression that it was like, okay, well, the reason the families are falling apart is because the men are just sitting in their quiet time space doing video games and not engaging, essentially having more of a slothful look at free time instead of continually like recognizing I'm a father, I'm a husband all the time. Like that doesn't ever shut off.
Yeah. So for the sake of the flesh, it's not always video games. It can be off-roading in the desert. It can be football on Sunday. What's happened? You're right. It's about the men.
Well, I'm not done though.
I know. But that actually illustrates it too. In American water, so this is, I think it's universal. You may be the exception, but the women speak out of hand, and we let you. It's not about speaking; it's about how and why. You can get in a million details, and you can call me a chauvinist. But the thing is that if a woman speaks out of hand in front of other men, the man should really get in the way and make sure it doesn't happen. And we don't. They just run everywhere and do whatever they want. And and then we go to our cave and we protect our cave. And we're like, well, if someone comes, we'll get the gun to the cave and defend the house. But like the house is not made for defense. Does it need to be? I don't know. That's not the point. The point is, again, we've lost the capacity to stop you from misbehaving, because however you behave, if we do try to stop you, you misbehave. You say something hurtful, and then we've become so weak that we let you win like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was actually sharing my misconception. I was speaking with another lady. Mm-hmm. So whether or not this was no. So what I had shared about thinking, okay, this generation of men was not raised to be gritty, to their work ethic was not what it has been in past generations. So that has been kind of an observation just over time. Mm-hmm. And I hear of these women who are like 90s women. I'm thinking that I'm hearing about these 90s women, but I'm actually not. I just see them, and I see women who are in your age group and older who kind of were the 90s women, the career, trying to make it to all the games. They're still being the soccer mom and, having all the parties, and they know all the Pinterest secrets. And so I'm just like, I don't know how they do it. But then I come to find out that no. So that may be the upper 40s and 50s, 50-year-olds, but the people who are in the lower 40s and below don't even want to do work. My house is a mess because I don't want to clean it. And so I'm going to go do something else. Christ have mercy. So like nobody's doing anything. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
So it's ownership. Well, if the man won't own it, why will the women own it? And if the women owned it for one generation, doesn't mean their granddaughters are going to own it once they realize what a bad, raw deal it is, right?
And the only thing I can think is that we're just plugging back in. Like, well, I could fold the laundry, but I could also watch this Netflix show. And I kind of like the feeling of watching the Netflix show better. So I'm just going to leave the laundry.
We don't think that much. We just get pushed. But that's why we're,
so the sloth, essentially, the sloth is on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. It's sloth, it's greed, it's gluttony. The 7 deadly sins. I mean, if you start asking some things about instead of asking 10 commandments through your day, just do 7 deadly sins one day and then like recoil in horror at how you don't even worry about it. It's kind of nuts, actually.
And so that was all out of you saying that we're living here in front of people. And it's like, essentially what's happening is we stopped watching and started living
as us.
And
it changed us a lot.
You get to see like, oh, once you start actually living, your mind kind of starts thinking.
It took me 3 years to figure out who I was after I stopped. 3 years. And it isn't that I stopped cold. It's when I realized this stuff's a problem to me. It's telling me who I am. I got to back off. This stuff is doing more than we realize it is doing. 3 years. Now I finally am like, I think I know who I really am. My dad died. A friend died. I went to Alaska. There's a bunch of other stuff taking place in those 3 years too. But I really think it's a bit of it's about time. Like, you're not just going to pull that thing out. Like, I mean, remember in the movie, The Matrix, when Neo gets his head pulled out, what they got to do is body. They lie him on a table and stick needles in his body so they can make electricity run through all his muscles so he can regrow the muscles he's now. He's been lying there for 20 years, right? Of course, he sits up in the tank right away as if he has muscles.
Like he has abs.
Yeah, right, yeah. So he does. In fact, you can see it. It's a movie. You suspend belief in order to let them tell you what to think. Definition. Movie. Suspend belief to be told what to think. Okay. So when you stop suspending your belief, it takes a while for the memory of suspended belief to wear off and reality to sink in. And I'm going to say 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 years. Before you can really know what it's like to not live inside that bubble world and find out who you actually are versus what you were doing because of all the stories that were telling you to do it. And so, yeah, if watching me, that looks like I'm trying things again, we're trying things, we're growing. And we're not attempting to be a marketable product that never changes. We're not going to become Costco. We're not going to become Focus on the Family. I want to launch Hebrew and Collegium and love to have that become something that establishes, but it's not Fisk. I don't want it to be Fisk. That's what my son's for, So speaking of, that's been good this week. That's been good. I'll save that one for you and I. I'll share this after we're done. So, hey everybody, again, thanks for being here. You can support us at subscribestar.com or subscribe to almost everything at RevFisk.com, which is a Substack. And don't wallow in the muck with those who have no hope. Lift up your head as you see the day approaching. You found Stop the White Nose with Jonathan and Meridith. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Meridith.
Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. That means you've been paid for, and that makes you immortal now. He's not going to be long anyway. The water seals it. The food feels it, feeds it. This is Christianity. You should join us. Rock on and alleluia.
Was that worth $1? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?